The story follows a beloved movie queen who is unexpectedly fired by her company and saddled with enormous debt. Her fiancé quickly breaks off their engagement without a word, even going so far as to smear her name online, just when everyone thinks she's finished. Expecting her to resort to sleeping with a few pot-bellied old men, Yuning's savior appears. He was originally almost her brother-in-law. He coldly hands her a note and some money, inviting her over. Even more surprisingly, he's the man she's secretly loved for years. Stay tuned for Yuning's revenge and their touching love story. The story begins in the office of Emperor God Entertainment, where a slightly tense conversation is taking place between the boss of Emperor God Entertainment and Jiang Yuning. Jiang Yuning, it is said, had an affair with a famous director, even driving the director's wife and children to their deaths. With the blackmail escalating day by day, the chairman, as soon as he finished speaking, immediately handed over the termination letter. Her contract was canceled, and the $60 million in compensation couldn't be reduced by a single cent. He even pressured her to pay the full amount within a week, warning her that if she didn't, the consequences would be unimaginable. Now, the third young master of the Lu family has also announced the cancellation of their engagement, and the chairman is well aware that she can't come up with that much money right now. But he is utterly ruthless. He doesn't want to see you. Be sensible. Jiang Yuning stood there quietly with her head lowered, listening. A week passed in a flash. As the sun began to set, a car sped down the highway. Sitting inside the luxurious gray sedan was none other than Jiang Yuning. Despite her recent dismissal, she refused to let herself appear pitiful. The driver informed her, "Yuning, your house is swarming with reporters right now, and it's about to be seized by the court. Do you have anywhere else to go?" It was none other than her agent. He also mentioned that Huo Wang, the CEO of Huanshe Era, was fond of her and asked if she wanted to go to his villa. After all, she had already climbed into that director's bed. The agent looked extremely anxious, but Yuning calmly read the note she had just taken out of her bag. "I didn't climb into the director's bed. What's going on with Emperor God Entertainment? You know better than anyone," she said nonchalantly, a hint of wanting to expose these hypocrites in her tone. Knowing he'd been exposed, the agent dropped the pretense of concern. "Yuning, I'm just trying to do what's best for you. Now that your fiancé has broken off the engagement and you've been smeared online, how are you going to survive in this industry? Besides, you're still in debt." Yuning felt a pang of discomfort. "I've already found a new place, so you don't have to bother." "Yuning, we've worked together for many years. I wouldn't lie to you. We used to be on the same path, but honestly, I don't know why this agent's attitude changed faster than flipping a pancake." Yuning ignored him. She had already taken out her phone and called someone, saying, "I've run into some trouble on the way." The other party simply said, "Understood," and then hung up. Whoever she wants to call, it's useless. We're about to arrive at Mr. Huang's villa. That agent is such a nuisance, resorting to coercion when he can't persuade someone, just like how their company operates. It wasn't long before the car sped up to CEO Huo Wang's villa. Just as it was about to head towards the gate, a dazzling supercar suddenly cut in front of them. A young man in a suit, dressed impeccably, stepped out of the luxury car. He walked to the gray sedan where Jiang Yuning was sitting, opened the door, and said softly, "Miss Jiang, Theo, Lu invites you." Just as she was about to leave, the shameless agent stopped her again. "Jiang Yuning, you can't go." He was about to act rashly when another figure swiftly intervened. "No one is leaving," a sharp voice declared. It was Lu Jingzhi, the second young master of the Lu family. The violet-haired young man's short, commanding statement was enough to silence the impudent manager and loosen his grip on Yuning. Lu Jingzhi then stepped into the car, telling her to get in, leaving the manager dumbfounded. Jiang Yuning, who had just been rejected by the third young master, immediately caught Lu Jingzhi's attention. Perhaps Yuning had known their intentions and thoughts from the very beginning. She said to Lu Jingzhi, "Wait a moment." Then, she turned and delivered a resounding slap to the shameless man's face, hard enough to draw blood. She could no longer contain her fury. "This is a gift in return. As for that perverted CEO Huang, you can enjoy him slowly." Having dealt with the gossip and said her piece, she strode towards the luxury car. Upon entering, she sensed a tense atmosphere. But the second young master, Lu Jingzhi, didn't even glance at her. Last night, Yuning had received a letter containing $60 million and a short message. Tomorrow, move to the royal mansion. Lu Jingzhi, she thought, what a windfall. Suddenly remembering the reason for Lu Jingzhi's appearance today, he turned to her, engaging her in conversation, even praising her for the slap she had just delivered. "Mr. Lu, I don't understand why you're helping me." She was genuinely shy as she asked this question, but she couldn't ignore the underlying reason. Lu Jingzhi leaned closer to Yuning, casually lifting her chin. You don't need to know why. You just need to know that from today onwards, you have to adapt to your new identity. What new identity? Yuning asked. My woman, Lu Jingzhi stated, his face now inches from hers, poised to capture her lips with a kiss. But I was once engaged to his younger brother. Is this still okay? Instead of kissing her, Lu Jingzhi whispered in her ear, that's not something you need to worry about. Yuning seemed somewhat resigned to her fate. She didn't resist his intimate gesture, even wondering if tonight, with such ambiguous actions, would be her first night. A warm smile finally graced her lips. You may be busy, but you still managed to give an answer. Busy, but still had time to tame her. Lu Jingzhi reached out, gently stroking Yuning's beautiful face, his eyes filled with confidence. She didn't dare to resist, but that didn't mean she would endure it like a fool. Yuning silently assessed the man before her. Mr. Lu was said to be cold, stern, mysterious, abstinent, and arrogant. He probably wouldn't force himself on anyone. The setting sun seemed reluctant to depart. They drove for a while, eventually stopping at Villa 28 in the royal residential area. Unexpectedly, Yuning was carried out of the car and into the house, bridal style, by Lu Jingzhi. He carried her straight to the bedroom, depositing her on the large bed. At this moment, she could only stammer. Mr. Lu, shall we light a candle to set the mood? Lu Jingzhi looked into Yuning's eyes, his grip on her wrist still firm. Stalling, she thought, might make this man let her go. Seeing the urgency of the situation, Yuning played her last card. I like you. I've liked you since I was young. Really. So I don't want our beginning to be ruined like this. Lu Jingzhi didn't say anything more, only thinking, like me, for so many years, yet still Lu Jingya's fiancé. He then decided to loosen his tie and leave, wondering what tricks this woman was playing. Jiang Yuning sat motionless on the bed. His habits hadn't changed, always suspicious of things easily obtained. Perhaps everyone was like this. Silence filled the room, broken only by the sudden ringing of her phone beside her. It was her agent. The caller said, Jining, I have good news. The company is no longer demanding compensation from you. At that moment, she understood. They had treated her this way simply because she had gotten into Lu Zhao's car. But she still wanted to ask why the company was suddenly being so generous. Was there a catch? There was a client who specifically requested her services. She just needed to go along. The 60 million was no longer required. Unsure of who she was meeting or how, Gung Jianning's eyes crinkled with a smile. Okay, she agreed instantly. Tell the vice general manager. I won't waste any more time on him. Anyone who thinks I'm that easy to manipulate is pathetically naive. The company had tricked her once. How could she possibly believe such an absurd thing again? On the balcony of the royal building, bathed in the last rays of the setting sun, Jian Yunjing lounged comfortably in a chair, a towel casually draped over his shoulder, his attention fixed on something. It was a business card Lu Jingzhi had left 3 days prior. When the time comes, I want to see proof that you like me. Eunice showed no reaction after reading it. Perhaps for her, it was a simple task. There was no rush. She could figure out when the time came. The phone beside her rang again. This time, the caller ID displayed Guji. She answered immediately, her voice brimming with affection. Brother, we can begin our plan. So, what exactly was the plan? The person on the other end was her cousin, Jiang Moyang, a skilled paparazzo. Finally, they could begin. At 5 p.m., he would start releasing damaging information about the artists under Dishin Entertainment. Do you have anyone you particularly dislike? He asked. A sly smile spread across her face. There isn't a single decent person in that company. You decide. Make sure you deal with Shun Rue and that deputy director properly. Her cousin chuckled. Understood. At 5 p.m. sharp, Dishin Entertainment scrambled to assemble a damage control team. All our artists are trending, but it's all negative news. The PR department is losing control. It's all because of Guji. Guji was the stage name of Zheng Yun'er's cousin. The chairman, before even having a chance to discuss a plan with his staff, hastily called Mu Yang, assuming he could easily manipulate him. Guji, what are you doing? Why did you release our dirt without a word? Guji, seeing everything unfold according to plan, calmly replied, You kicked out the person I like, Gung Jianning, and released the worst possible news. I had no one else to smear. If it weren't for that, you should be begging her to come back. I might consider stopping then. Releasing dirt on our other artists? Are you joking? The chairman was starting to sweat, but he tried to maintain his composure. If they hadn't done anything wrong, things wouldn't have come to this. Just you wait and see. I'm not joking. If you don't make a decision soon, I'll continue tomorrow. While Jiang was having a drink at the Lu family mansion, she also saw the news her cousin had released, negative news about Dishan Entertainment. The company's leading star was exposed for being a mistress and engaging in escorting, along with photos of another artist in a compromising position with a man. It had all been released. At that moment, Lu Jingzhi unexpectedly called. She immediately answered with her brightest expression. "Hello, I haven't seen you." Jingzhi asked, "Is Dishan Entertainment your former agency?" "Yes, that's right. Nothing's wrong. Go to sleep early." He was actually reminding her. Was he still paying attention to entertainment industry news? Jingzhi had likely just returned from work, yet he had another matter to handle. Such a disreputable company doesn't deserve to continue operating. "Within 3 days, I want to see them bankrupt," he commanded. His secretary immediately responded, "Understood." Jiang seemed puzzled by the call. Jingzhi had only asked a few questions before hanging up. She didn't think much of it. Since it was time to rest, she casually hopped onto the large bed. She quickly wrapped herself in the blanket, inhaling his scent. She had never imagined she would one day sleep in his bed like a dream. Perhaps she truly did have feelings for Lu Jingzhi. As she drifted into a deep slumber, midnight found the conference room at Emperor Entertainment a scene of stark contrast. The company's chairman, a high-ranking executive, anxiously gnawed at his fingernails, while the exhausted employees scrambled for a solution, finding none. The next morning, sunlight streamed into the Lu family home. Yinqing was still lost in a hazy dream when someone called her. She sat up and answered the phone. That shameless agent's anxious voice pleaded, "Jiang, my dear, where are you? The CEO wants to see you. Can I come pick you up? There's good news. You don't have to pay back the money, and you don't have to see any more clients. You just need to come back." They were so naive and careless in their work that even the pathetic chairman didn't know to call her directly, instead going through her agent. Perhaps they still thought she was a fool, so she would play along. Oh, the company was in trouble. Guji had betrayed them. He would stop if she returned. The higher-ups were in a bind. If she helped the company this time, they would certainly remember her kindness. She played her part well. Is that so? That's wonderful. Come pick me up. I'll explain everything in detail when I get to the company. Okay, I'll be there soon. With that, she was fully awake. The new day held promise. A good show was about to unfold at the main building. The main building of Emperor Entertainment, grand and imposing, built on a foundation of dirty deals and successfully swindled sponsorships. The chairman appeared, smiling with the eager politeness of a puppy, offering her a cup of tea in both hands. He looked haggard after a sleepless night. "Jiang, it's so good to have you back." Next came the paperwork. The renewed contract was ready for her, and if she had any other conditions, she was welcome to voice them. At this moment, Jiang sat with her legs crossed, a smile playing on her lips, amused by the squirming man before her and the misfortune of his dirty company. But when she looked up, her expression shifted. She picked up the documents with feigned delight, thanking the company with apparent sincerity. She placed the documents on the table and picked up a pen. They watched, thinking it was a done deal. However, things were not that simple. The pen hovered in midair, never quite touching the paper. She put down the pen and crossed her legs again, arms folded across her chest. "No, I'm not signing." This time, the chairman practically draped himself over the table, pleading, "Tell me, what do you need?" At this point, she was just saying whatever came to mind, because she wasn't going back no matter what. She pointed at the two-faced agent. "Can you fire him from Emperor Entertainment?" The agent's true colors showed again as he yelled, "Jiang Yuning, aren't you going too far? I was so good to you before. Don't be ungrateful." He might not have been aware, but she knew exactly what he had done. Right now, she held all the cards and could get whatever she wanted. "You think I'm being unreasonable?" "Not at all. Not at all." The chairman then turned to the agent. You're fired, effective immediately." This stunned him, the look on his face comical. His expression shifted for the nth time, and he knelt down, feigning remorse. "Jiang, I was wrong. I was forced." She didn't even spare a glance at the pathetic scum. A satisfied smile touched her lips, relishing the taste of giving him a dose of his own medicine. She twirled the pen in her hand, saying nothing. Of course, this made the chairman extremely anxious. He hurriedly said, "My dear, please, tell me what else you want." Perhaps what she should say was, "You should apologize to me, right here, right now. She stole so many of my resources before, even leaving a burn scar on my shoulder. I'll never forget that grudge." Two groveling figures knelt before her, a sight that filled Jiang Yuning with immense satisfaction. The chairman bobbed his head eagerly. I'll call Shen Ayu right now and tell her to come here immediately. 30 minutes later, the pathetic chairman ushered in a furious young woman. Shen Ayu apologized to Yuning now. Why should I apologize to her? The naive girl was oblivious to the impending danger. Insolent vice president, Yuning began, already gathering her bag and rising to leave. Given your attitude, perhaps you should find alternative arrangements for handling company affairs. The chairman, hearing this, erupted in fury. Shen Ayu, apologize, or I'll blacklist you immediately. After all, your scandal has been completely exposed. Fear gripped Shen Ayu instantly. I'm sorry, she stammered. Jiang Yuning wasn't about to let her off so easily. She stepped forward, tilting Shen Ayu's chin upwards. Who is apologizing to whom? Shen Ayu, still clueless, defiantly swatted Yuning's hand away. Jiang Yuning, what's wrong with you? If it weren't for Guji's betrayal, you'd be nothing. I see, Yuning replied, her patience wearing thin. Then I'll show you exactly what you just threw away. She pulled out her phone. Guji, the mere utterance of the name, sent a wave of terror through both women. Ning. Muyang answered the phone warmly and promptly. Yuning adopted a coquettish tone. Shen Ayu refuses to apologize to me. Oh, and remember that video of her kissing that young idol? Let's arrange something. Before Muyang could even respond, the wheels were already in motion. This time, true fear consumed Shen Ayu. Her face paled as she scrambled forward, clutching Yuning's arm. Please, I was wrong. I was truly wrong. Don't let Guji expose it. Like the two before her, she dropped to her knees. I'm nothing. Jiang Yuning, I beg you. Yuning, satisfied with Shen Ayu's groveling, allowed a small smile to play on her lips. Meanwhile, the vice president, a flicker of understanding dawning in his eyes, spoke up. What's your relationship with Guji? He's my brother. I apologize for not telling you sooner. She added with a touch of warmth. My brother has a very good memory. You colluded with the Lu family to frame me, and that made my brother very unhappy. Impossible. How could she know about our plan? No. If Guji is your brother, why did he expose your scandalous information before? Simple. I wanted to get rid of my dreadful fiancé, Lu Sonia. She delivered her warning with a chilling calm. My brother possesses quite a bit of explosive material on Lu Sonia and other artists. What do you think I'll do to Lu Sonia next? And to all of you? No. Yuning. Not only were they quick to change their tune, but this group also had a penchant for getting physical. Before she could react, they grabbed her wrists, their grips like vices. She flung one aside. Spare us. We were only threatened by Ruth and Sheila. They scrambled to deflect blame, refusing to acknowledge their own complicity. Jiang Yuning reached the door, then paused, a hint of cruelty in her eyes. Before I go, let me give you one more piece of good news. These games are just the beginning. There's much more fun to come. She slammed the door shut behind her. Almost immediately, their phones rang. It was Lu Jingzhi, the third young master of the Lu family. The now servile manager trembled, clutching the other man's sleeve. Vice President, please don't contact Lu Jingzhi again. We'll suffer a far worse fate. Get out. The deteriorating situation had made the man volatile, his frustration now directed at his subordinates. The manager, already a quivering mess, had completely lost his composure. We were wrong, truly wrong. Moments later, the door opened again. This time, it was the police. Hello, we receive a report that Emperor Entertainment is involved in illicit transactions. Please come with us. They lived in this world, oblivious, both equally shocked to discover they were facing the police. Muyang quickly received the news and immediately called Jiang Yuning. Yuning, I just got word that Emperor Entertainment is being investigated. Who could be this powerful, even more ruthless than us? A thought flashed through her mind. Then she cleared her throat. Ahem, this might have something to do with Lu Jingzhi. What do you mean? The scene shifted to a luxurious car traveling down the road. The secretary handed a stack of documents to his superior with both hands. This is what you asked me to investigate. And the leader is Lu Jingzhi, just as Jiang Yuning suspected. The secretary added, Lu Jingzhi's relationship with Miss Jiang seems to be unusual. He's cunning and cautious, and his true background is yet to be uncovered. Perhaps he saw the ambiguous relationship between Yuning and Lu Jingzhi and, feeling a pang of jealousy, immediately ordered the car to turn around and head towards the royal building. The driver obeyed the order. Back on the balcony, Jiang Yuning was chatting with her cousin. I'm at Lu Jingzhi's villa right now. He even gave me 60 million. Mu Yang listened to his sister's story in astonishment, without interrupting. Are you crazy? I know you've liked him since you were little, but he's the older brother of the fiancé you ran away from. You just escaped the dragon's den, and now you want to enter the tiger's lair? She hesitated. Then a strange sound seemed to appear as if someone was approaching. We'll talk later. Then she carefully walked down the stairs. Soon, she saw the figure, Lu Jingzhi, who had just opened the door and walked in. She was about to ask him why he had arrived earlier than scheduled. Before she could finish her question, her wrist was grabbed again, and she was forcibly pressed onto a chair, her hands tightly locked. She could only let out a small ah. Then, everything was interrupted by Lu Jingzhi's deep kiss. She blushed, feeling both embarrassed and breathless. Lu Jingzhi seemed to have staked his claim. He held her waist tightly, caressing her lips. She said she likes me. Yes, but your actions just now scared me, so now I don't like you anymore. You're such a tease. Her affections seemed to be easily adjustable. Lu Jingzhi didn't quite understand the joke and felt a little annoyed. She immediately realized, ahem, after what just happened, I've decided to like you a little less. I can still control it for now. And her words seemed to have a way of making things true. After a few curt words, he turned and left without saying another word to her. With a hint of regret, she asked, "Are you leaving now?" His reply was concise, returning to the Lu family mansion. Goodbye. He might not remember much, but when it came to threatening this girl, he remembered clearly. Don't forget the task I gave you. After he left, she crossed her arms, thinking, this man came all this way just to give me a hard time. How perplexing. A larger mansion stood in the rain, every room within brightly lit. Just as I was wondering what was going on, it started to rain, and I was inside an even larger mansion, brightly lit throughout. In a large room, two people were embracing in a chair. Zongyi, only broke off the engagement a week ago. How can we get engaged now? You promised me you wouldn't damage my reputation. That was the young man's reply. Tomorrow I'll arrange to bring Jiang Yuning over, give her some benefits, and have her cooperate with the act. The vague person from earlier was Lu Zongyi, Jiang Yuning's former fiancé, and the girl clinging to him was Hu Yushi. She said in a sweet voice, "Don't lie to me. You have to publicly express your disdain for her, preferably making it clear that there's no going back." Lu Zongyi gently lifted Hu Yushi's face. "Don't worry. To win you over, I've already forced Jiang Yuning into a corner. What more do you need to believe? The two of them, they thought they could humiliate Jining in public. If you don't believe me, I'll bring Jiang Yuning to you tomorrow. But this isn't me bullying a newcomer. It's because of our marriage." The passionate night of two overly optimistic young people had ended. Now, in the early morning, beneath a large building, a young man was idling away his time, waiting for someone. The person who appeared was none other than the goddess Jiang Yuning. Even without being active in the entertainment industry, she always maintained her appearance. The young man from earlier, upon seeing her, immediately raised his hand in greeting. "Miss Jiang, this is Jiang Ming, Ko-ji's classmate." Jining, seeing him, gave a few instructions. "Wait before going in. When the time is right, you'll pretend to be my assistant. Go, and don't forget to take pictures at the right moment." It turned out his cousin's friend somewhat admired Jining. He agreed, but didn't forget to set conditions. "Okay, Miss Jiang, after this is done, can I get your autograph?" She readily agreed. Then they entered the building together, where someone came out to greet them, opening the door and inviting the two inside. As soon as she entered, she chose a large cushioned chair to make herself comfortable, while Jiang Ming was still looking around. The receptionist from before added, "Miss Jiang, please wait a moment. Our general manager will be here shortly." She spoke absent-mindedly, starting to fiddle with her purse. Tilting her head, resting her chin on her hand, she seemed to be reminiscing. A conversation between her and Mu Yang played out in her mind. "You're saying Louisiana, that scumbag, wants to sign you?" "Yeah, that piece of trash wants to set his sights on you again. What are you going to do now? Go to the appointed place and see what's up. But, hey, I want to bring that paparazzi along with that camera." She won't run. She'll charge straight at the enemy to test their mettle. As the memory concluded, a strange noise echoed in the room. She turned, and a woman's figure appeared in the doorway. Miss Hu walked in, her demeanor incredibly relaxed and confident, dressed like a star, no less glamorous than Jining herself. She too walked in and settled into a chair. You must have had a hard time these past few years, Jiang Yuning. Jining, unsure of what she was up to, simply said, "Is that you? Who you sure?" Who you sure had just offered a polite greeting, but upon sitting down, her tone turned sharp. She interlaced her fingers, twisting her knuckles. She clearly knew she wasn't worthy, yet still clung to the engagement with the Lu family. "Are you finally coming to your senses now?" Jining noticed the other woman's aggressiveness and hostility, but she maintained her composure, even asking in return, "Oh really? Is that what Louisiana told you?" Seeing that Jining didn't seem to have any regrets, Hu Yushi laughed haughtily. "What are you? What's your status in the Lu family? Don't you know?" Jiang Yuning adjusted her elegant posture. "Let me make this clear. You and Louisiana, you two snuck around, reckless, scheming to accuse me of having an affair with some director, saying I was a pest. Now tell me, what you wanted to do this time?" The young miss who looked at the other with utter disdain, confidently asserting that it was a blessing for Jining to be able to sacrifice herself for her and Zhongyi. Then she gestured for someone to bring over a thick stack of documents. The person disrespectfully held a sheet of paper in front of Jining. "Hui Wei," she continued, "as long as you agreed to let us take some material, I'll give you part of the contract signed with Zhengyang. You should know no one dares to sign with you now." Jiang Jining tilted her head and asked, "What kind of information?" She was genuinely curious. She shouldn't just silence them. She needed to expose their filth and cowardice. That was why she brought a professional hunter with her today. Hui Yushi didn't hesitate, speaking frankly. "For example, if some handsome guys flirt with you, you'd better accept it. That way, you still have a sliver of hope. If you resist, the consequences will only bring us trouble. You surely understand what your future will be like, right?" They hadn't expected Yunjin to be so accommodating. "Fine, I'll sign." Yunjin swiftly signed the document and handed it back to Hui Yushi. Now it was her turn. Yushi was secretly delighted, thinking she could easily control others. "If you had been obedient from the beginning, we wouldn't have had to go through all this trouble." Taking a closer look at the contract, it turned out to be a curse. "Damn it, Jiang Yuning is really infuriating," Vicky exclaimed, tearing the contract to shreds. She jumped up, intending to lunge at her, shouting, "Jiang Yuning." At this moment, our heroine was inwardly delighted. "Oh my goodness, my hearing is perfectly fine. No need to shout like that. I don't know the consequences of provoking CEO Lu, but if the public knows there are two vicious villains like you, I can foresee your fate." "Just you? Do you really have that kind of ability?" Yuning retorted. "I don't have the ability." She glanced at Jiang Ming, who immediately understood. "Did you get high-definition photos of that actress just now?" "Got them. Ensured they're crystal clear." At this point, Yushi was still too careless and arrogant. "Jiang Yuning, you're too naive. Even if you manage to take those photos, you won't be able to release them." Jiang Yuning couldn't help but laugh at this moment, wondering who the real fool was. "Why would I take it outside? I could just post it online directly. Where does this actress actually live? How can she still be so clueless?" I want to cry, but I can't help but want to laugh. Even at this point, Hui Yushi still didn't understand the gravity of the situation. She only knew to be angry when being teased. She even dared to call CEO Lu, using a very coquettish tone. "Zhongyi, Jiang Yuning is bullying me," seeking his help, only to receive his curt reply, "Go home first." Not understanding why the answer was like this, she immediately raised her voice. "Zhongyi, you must promise me. You must make Jiang Yuning pay the price." But this foolish girl still didn't realize that the staff members beside her were trembling uncontrollably while looking at the latest news. Seeing Yushi being so foolish yet so arrogant, Zhongyi couldn't help but retort, "Yushi, haven't you embarrassed me enough?" "Miss Hu, something's happened. Come and take a look." Only then did she notice the news. Hui Yushi opened Weibo's trending topics, and her extramarital affair with Master Lu was exposed, now a hot topic. Seeing her shady deeds exposed, Hui Yushi felt a surge of anger as she read the trending headlines. Malicious comments on social media were endless. How can someone like this still be an award-winning actress? I strongly suggest boycotting this scum. So even the Lack family has someone like this. She was so frightened that her phone dropped. Seeing this scene, Yuning approached her, teasing, "Guji really didn't give us any face, bro." Better go and pray to Buddha, whether good or bad. Otherwise, looking at our queen's face, her makeup is going to come off. This sentence deeply stung her heart, becoming more jarring with each passing moment. Yunjin took the opportunity to approach the woman, continuing to taunt her. Leave the handsome guys of unknown origin for Hui Ying to enjoy alone. A bigger surprise will be your gift later. Leaving the room, Jiang Ming couldn't help but sigh at how impressive her performance was. Seeing him so flamboyant, Yunjin couldn't help but praise him, saying, "Well said." In the evening, Lu Jingzhi got off work and got in his car to go home. He got into the car, closed his eyes tightly, staying awake and adjusting his mood. The opportunity to report the matter finally arose. The secretary reported, "Sir, Miss Jiang is trending online. Please take a look." Hearing this, Lu Jingzhi immediately asked the secretary if Jiang Ruo was in trouble. This left the secretary, well aware of her boundaries, in a bit of a predicament. She then handed her phone to Lu Jingzhi. He glanced at it, but showed no particular interest. He then turned around to inquire about the investigation into Gu Ji's identity. The secretary, not having completed the investigation, tentatively asked if it would be easier for Lu Jingzhi to question Gu Ji directly. Lu Jingzhi, knowing full well the difficulty she faced, simply told the driver to take him back to the Lu family mansion. The luxury car smoothly entered the magnificent estate. In the living room, Lu Zhangye was looking at something on his phone. Suddenly, Lu Jingzhi walked in. The younger man's expression changed dramatically, and he hurriedly stood up to greet him. "Big brother, you're back." Seeing Lu Zhangye's face, Lu Jingzhi's displeasure was evident. "Don't let these private matters tarnish the Lu family name." He slowly ascended the stairs. Meanwhile, the fear in Lu Zhangye's expression finally eased somewhat, though the pressure he felt remained immense. In the Yulon pavilion, where Yun Qing resided, her face had become unusually pale, a flicker of unease in her eyes. Clutching her stomach, she trembled uncontrollably. Troubles never come singly. Yun Qing pressed the emergency contact number. Holding her abdomen, she spoke softly to the person on the other end of the line. "Darling, I'm feeling very unwell. Could you come and take care of me?" She hung up immediately, the pain intensifying. After a while, Yun Qing quickly picked up her phone to check the time. Quite some time had passed, yet she still hadn't seen anyone. Suddenly, the door to the room was flung open. This startled Yun Qing, who was lying inside, causing her to turn her head. Seeing that it was Lu Jingzhi, her mind filled with questions. It turned out that because of her new phone, the first number saved was his. Without a word, he walked forward and scooped her into his arms, leaving Yun Qing utterly bewildered. Lu Jingzhi got into the car and took her to the hospital. However, Yun Qing didn't want this at all, being a public figure, but he was resolute. Yun Qing, embarrassed, explained that her distress wasn't a hospital-worthy emergency. It was just her period. Mid-stride, Lu Jingzhi froze, hearing these words. He sat down, still holding Yun Qing. Then, he gently rubbed her stomach, as if to comfort her. This gesture startled her. It was so unexpected. Silence filled the space, punctuated only by the deepening blush on Yun Qing's face. Feeling Lu Jingzhi's hand linger a little too long, she quickly grabbed his hand and pulled it away. "This isn't appropriate. Don't." Having said that, Yun Qing quickly thought of an excuse. "But Sister Liang will be here soon, and she'll see." Before she could finish her sentence, Lu Jingzhi's hand, seemingly out of nowhere, produced a cloth, footsteps approaching, wrapping it around her. "It must be Sister Liang asking about Miss Jiang. I bought you a pack of painkillers and sanitary pads." Having said that, Sister Liang hesitated, exchanging a glance with Lu Jingzhi. "Sir, the hot water is ready. Miss Jiang will feel much better after taking the medicine." His aunt spoke as she handed the medicine to Lu Jingzhi. He had just taken the medicine when Sister Liang finished her tasks. The sound of the door alerted Yun Qing, prompting her to turn her head. Then, suddenly hearing Lu Jingzhi's voice, she remembered the medicine and drank it while observing the man. His unexpected tenderness was truly captivating. Lu Jingzhi, his handsome face softening, wiped a dribble of drool from the corner of Yuning's mouth. Hearing his words, Yuning blushed, turning her head away in embarrassment. After she finished her medicine, Lu Jingzhi scooped her up into his arms. He told her to stay still so he could carry her back to rest. Yuning murmured a soft, "Thank you." In Yuning's room, Lu Jingzhi asked if she experienced experienced this pain often. She admitted she did, but wasn't entirely sure when it would strike. As a girl, there were always a few days each month that were uncomfortable. After listening, Lu Jingzhi turned and said he would bring the family's private doctor to consult with her the next day. Watching Lu Jingzhi's elegant retreating figure, Yuning felt a surge of warmth. This man was too considerate, making her feel incredibly shy. A while later, as she sat scrolling through her phone, someone entered. Seeing Lu Jingzhi, fresh from the shower, his well-defined physique rivaling that of superstar, Yuning's eyes nearly popped out of her head. A sudden realization dawned on her. Was he planning to sleep here tonight? However, she wasn't the one to make that decision, so she could only watch helplessly as Lu Jingzhi climbed into the bed. He leaned closer, his voice a low murmur. Actually, if you don't want to be in pain, there's another way. Do you want to know? No. Yuning huddled under the blankets, her voice firm. I don't want to know. I want to sleep. After tossing and turning for a while, Yuning finally drifted off to sleep. Her restless limbs caused the blanket to slip off the bed, and her leg eventually draped itself over Lu Jingzhi, who lay beside her. He awoke to the feeling of her leg against him. Lu Jingzhi turned, gazing at the sleeping girl beside him. He recalled Yuning's previous confession, the earnest and passionate look in her eyes, leaving a deep impression. Suddenly, a phone rang. Someone was calling Yuning. Just as Lu Jingzhi squinted, reaching for the phone, Yuning grabbed his hand, murmuring, Can, don't go. Clutching his hand tightly with both of hers, she said with a hint of delight, Let me touch your abs. Amused, Lu Jingzhi fell silent, letting her have her way. The next morning, as the first rays of dawn filtered through the curtains, Yuning woke up in a daze, her arms wrapped around Lu Jingzhi. Seeing her hand resting where it shouldn't be, she quickly jumped back, stammering apologies. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. It's all right, Lu Jingzhi said, unfazed, telling her she could continue. Emboldened, Yuning reached out again, touching his abs, muttering that something felt different, yet her hand couldn't resist continuing its exploration. Suddenly realizing the impropriety, she quickly retracted her hand, thinking she'd try again next time, for sure. She silently scolded her hand for its boldness. As Yuning was lost in thought, Lu Jingzhi had already walked over to the window by the curtains, reminding her, You haven't answered your phone yet. His voice sounded slightly different. Yuning picked up her phone. The caller was Guji, calling again so early in the morning. Lu Jingzhi narrowed his eyes, observing Yuning answering a call from a young man. As soon as Yuning answered, she was met with a barrage of complaints. Do you know how to answer the phone? Oh, I was asleep. Guji had a reason for calling. CEO Lu had come up with another scheme to target her. Earlier, the wife of the adulterous director had caused a scene online, claiming she'd witnessed her husband and the girl in a compromising position in bed. Oh, witnessed. What a joke. Yuning admitted it, and now wanted to go to the hospital herself to deal with the fallout. But Guji felt it was unnecessary for her to get involved, as Lu Jingzhi could handle it. While that was true, besides her grandfather, besides Guji, there really wasn't anyone else, her family. Yuning felt a pang of unease about her relationship with Lu Jingzhi. You don't understand. Fine, Guji snapped. If you want to do this, then don't call me again. Yunjin was incessantly calling Lu Jingzhi to come downstairs. Halfway down, she saw him dressed impeccably in a suit, ready for work. Surprised, she asked, Aren't you going to finish your breakfast before leaving? He simply replied, Something came up. His curtness made Yunjin sigh. His attitude had been shifting erratically, like a spinning top, but she must have done something to upset him. Yunjin reached out, taking his hand. What's wrong? What are you so angry about? Lu Jingzhi's expression remained serious. Third brother is investigating Gu Ji's identity. I also want to know who this person is. Hearing that was about Gu Ji's identity, Yunjin laughed. Did you forget? He's my second uncle's son. I even brought him to the Lu family home. His name is Jiang Yuning. She playfully nudged Lu Jingzhi. Hey, second brother, don't be so cold. Don't worry. Now that I'm here, there's only you. I wouldn't two-time you. But Lu Jingzhi wasn't easily appeased. He leaned down, his voice icy as he looked directly into Yunjin's eyes. If you dare stray, you won't have legs to run with. Yunjin flustered slightly. Don't. I still need my legs. But Lu Jingzhi seemed to think her legs had other uses. Catching her off guard, he swept her into his arms. Put me down. Yunjin said, a blush creeping up her cheeks. But Lu Jingzhi wasn't about to let her go that easily. Just then, Mrs. Liang called out, "Sir, miss." She paused, momentarily speechless at the scene before her. She had been about to call them in for breakfast, but they had been caught in a rather compromising position. Lu Jingzhi gently set Yunjin down and patted her head, his voice softening. "I hope that next time you encounter any trouble, the first thing you do is call me, not some other man." Before she could reply, Lu Jingzhi had already opened the door and left. Yunjin was left with a single thought. Is he jealous? In the car, his secretary informed him, "Sir, should Shizi handle the matter concerning the chairman's wife?" After a moment of consideration, Lu Jingzhi replied, "Let her handle it. Make sure she takes care of it thoroughly, leaving no loose ends. Also, Guji's identity must be protected. No one should be able to investigate or uncover it." "Yes, sir." Understood. A wealthy young lady's breakfast was a delightful affair, a feast for the eyes and the palate. The young woman ate while simultaneously sparring with commoners online. A luxurious red car pulled up outside the cafe. A pair of high heels emerged from the vehicle. The waiting reporters immediately swarmed her, shouting, "Miss Jiang." They bombarded her with questions. Jiang Yuning ignored them, responding with a single, chilling word, "Stop." She removed her sunglasses and addressed them with cool confidence. "This is a hospital. I expect you to behave yourselves in public and keep your voices down. I'm already disliked enough. Do you want to draw even more attention to me? It's still a mystery where those two people are who dared to confront me." With that, she entered the cafe next to the hospital. Inside the cafe, her voice rang out. "As for me, I just need to wait here. I have time after all. I also want to hear what Mrs. Zhou actually saw that night." She remained composed, confident, and as beautiful as ever. The reporter sitting opposite her asked, "Miss Jiang, since we're all waiting, why don't you tell us what happened that night?" Jiang Yuning placed her teacup on the table and said generously, "All right." She began to recount the events of that evening. "That night, after the rap party for Transcendental Banter, my agency called me and said there was a gathering. They wanted me to meet Director Shu and try out for a new role. My agent was drunk and said she wanted to rest in the car. Looking back, it was probably all prearranged. Afterwards, I went upstairs alone because, as usual, when I opened the door, someone from another department would be waiting for me. I found Director Shu already drunk, lying on the sofa, so I turned and left. Just then, she saw Mrs. Shu in the hallway. However, coincidentally, Mrs. Shu also appeared there, just as Mrs. Shu also appeared there. While they were talking, a girl suddenly rushed in from outside and shouted, "Jiang Yuning, stop making up stories. Mrs. Shu is calling for you." Jiang Yuning smiled with interest and said, "This is just wonderful." Jiang Yuning quickly rushed to the hospital. First, she met the doctor, who told her she could go in, but not to bring any reporters, as the patient needed rest. Jiang Yuning replied, "I'll go in alone." Afterwards, the doctor led Jiang Yuning into the ward to see Mrs. Shu. Jiang Yuning walked into the ward and placed her phone opposite Mrs. Shu's bed. As soon as Mrs. Shu saw her, she couldn't help but shout angrily, "Jiang Yuning, I'm already like this, and you still come to hurt me. Are you even human?" Placed on the table. The phone was recording the entire conversation between the two. Jiang Yuning walked towards the bed and said, "I won't hurt you, but I won't let myself be wrong for no reason either. You said that you saw me running out of the room naked that day. Were you serious?" Mrs. Shu angrily pointed her finger at her and cursed. "You little slut, how could you possibly fake it? Everything was photographed by the reporters." Jiang Yuning immediately retorted, "Madam, don't try to exploit the situation. I was fully dressed when the reporters photographed me. So what's the problem?" Mrs. Shu wasn't one to take things lying down either. She said, "Those reporters just arrived late, but when I went in, she was completely naked." Hearing this, Jiang Yuning suddenly asked her, "Did you see the scar on my chest?" Mrs. Shu didn't even think before immediately replying, "Of course I saw it. Not only did I see it, but I saw it very clearly." Jiang Yuning smiled when she heard this, for she had taken the bait. Only then did she say, "I'm sorry, Mrs. Shu, but I don't have a scar on my chest." She placed her hand on her chest. Mrs. Shu immediately froze, her face darkening as she realized she had fallen into a trap. Jiang Yuning continued to confront her. "Also, that night, I entered the hotel at 9:50 p.m. and left at 10 p.m. and ran into you. Aside from the time I waited for the elevator door to open, I was only in the room for a few minutes. How could I possibly have done anything sneaky in such a short time?" "Madam," she cried, "how did I know about your secret affair?" Jiang Yuning, "You shameless woman, You broke up my family. You won't escape punishment. At this point, Jiang Yuning pretended to sigh helplessly and admitted to her, if things have come to this, I might as well tell the truth. Director Shu and I do have a complicated relationship. Mrs. Shu immediately went crazy. Ignoring the nurse's attempts to restrain her, she tried to jump out of bed to hit her, cursing, "You slut, you'll die a horrible death." Jiang Yuning deliberately provoked her, saying, "Sister, actually, it's not just you who's pregnant and suffering. I'm pregnant too." Shuga said he's had enough of a shrew like you. He only likes young and beautiful women like me. So he said he's going to divorce you for me. Mrs. Shu's face darkened as she shouted, "Impossible." Jiang Yuning tricked her into another trap. "Sister Shu, if you don't believe me, then come with me to the obstetrics and gynecology department for a checkup." Jiang Yuning immediately retorted angrily, "Old whose every move is under my control, he absolutely couldn't have a date with any vixen. Don't try to fool me." Jiang Yuning replied vaguely but pointedly, "I was pregnant that night." Madame Shu's face darkened, and she shouted hysterically, "The truth is that child could never be his. He was drugged that night and passed out early. You little slut, who knows whose bastard you're carrying, but you dare to slander him." Then she turned around. Mrs. Shu, who was behind her, realized she had been tricked again and flew into a rage. But all she could do was shriek from the bed, "How dare you set me up?" Jiang Yuning picked up her phone and told her triumphantly, "That's right, I'm not pregnant. But who is really framing whom? Everyone watching the live stream right now can be a witness." At this moment, Madame Shu, lying on the bed, clutched her stomach and trembled as she said to the doctor, "Doctor, my stomach hurts so much, but I still miss Jiang Yuning so much. Jiang Yuning, if anything happens to my child, I will never let you off the hook." Jiang Yuning turned and walked out, but before turning around, she said, "Please do everything you can to save Madame Shu's child. Send all the medical bills to me." After the examination, the doctor pulled back the curtain and told her, "Madame Shu, your pregnancy is perfectly normal. There's nothing wrong." Hearing this, Madame Shu clutched her belly excitedly and asked, "How can this be? She angered me so much. How can the baby be completely fine?" Jiang Yuning was about to leave, waving goodbye politely, and said, "Sister, my lawyer will be in touch with you soon. I'm sorry to have you in court while you're pregnant. Since you don't seem to care about the child in your belly anyway, I won't show you any more sympathy. All right, goodbye." As soon as she walked out, two lawyers walked into the ward, holding a stack of documents. They were clearly hired by her. As soon as the male lawyer entered the room, he said to Madame Shu, who was lying in the hospital bed, "Madame Shu, we are lawyers from the Lu family. We are here today hoping that you will publicly reveal the reason for harming Miss Jiang. Otherwise, you and your husband will be left with nothing." At first, she was stunned, and after hearing these words, her face immediately turned pale, and she was drenched in a cold sweat, knowing her secret affair with her lover outside. There's no escape. The noisy voices outside the hospital continued to interview Jiang Yuning. "Miss Jiang, why do you think Miss Shu wanted to harm you? Is there someone behind this?" a reporter beside her asked. "Miss Jiang, do you have anything to say about the CEO of the Lu Corporation and who you sure?" The male reporter kept taking pictures and videos of her. Jiang Yuning adjusted her pink glasses and replied curtly, "Nothing to say. Scumbag and bitch. May heaven bring swift retribution upon them. Thank you." As she arrived back outside the Imperial Dragon Pavilion, her phone suddenly rang. She opened her phone and immediately saw the trending news on the front page headlines. Huge reversal. Madame Shu publicly apologizes to Jiang Yuning. As she read the news, she thought of Guji, the message warmly sinking in. The video of Madame Shu apologizing to her played on her phone, a reluctant expression on her face as she said, "I'm truly sorry, Miss Jiang. My husband accepted some benefit from Shangshi Entertainment and, together with the third young master of the Lu family, planned to slander Miss Jiang and ruin her reputation, thereby helping the third young master smoothly break off his engagement." Jiang Yuning simply commented, "If you had known this would happen, why did you do it in the first place?" Suddenly, someone called. Seeing the name displayed on the screen, she answered without hesitation, "Mr. Lu, what childish game are you playing this time?" As soon as she answered the phone, Mr. Lu's cheerful voice rang out. "Jiang Yuning, are you trying to get revenge on me?" Jiang Yuning replied, "Why call it revenge? I was merely forced to prove my innocence." Mr. Lu gripped his phone, his face darkening as he said angrily, "Very well, Jiang Yuning, just you wait. Guji lay leisurely on the sofa, looking at his laptop, when he suddenly received a notification. As Jiang Yuning answered the phone with a simple hello, she was met with a sharp report. Mr. Lu, the voice on the other end said, not only did he refuse the offer, but he also insulted me. Perhaps we should send Mr. Lu a gift of his own. Guji, taking a cigarette from his mouth, replied, all right, I'll arrange it. The scene shifted to the opulent Lu family mansion. Inside a lavishly decorated room, the Lu family berated Lu Zongye. Look at the trouble you've caused. Lu Zhengbai, the imposing patriarch and chairman of the Lu Corporation, sat on the sofa, his voice laced with disapproval. Even if you don't like Yuqing, even if you dislike the marriage arranged by your grandfather, you shouldn't treat her like that. He thought of the scandalous article online, #Lu Corpora Secret Affair, plastered with photos of his son and various actresses. His face darkened. Lu Zongye couldn't contain his resentment. Dad, the Jiang family has been in decline for years. Jiang Yuning is just a small-time actress. Why should she act so high and mighty? How could I possibly marry someone so unaware of her place? Lu Zhengbai, enraged, pointed a finger at his son, about to unleash another wave of reprimands, when a familiar voice cut through the tension. Repeat what you just said. Every head in the room snapped towards the source. Lu Jingzhi stood there, radiating an air of authority. If I hear you speak ill of the Jiang family again, he stated, his voice unwavering, you'll be out of this house. If second uncle can't teach you manners, I'm more than willing to take over. Lu Zongye, his face now a mask of sullen resentment, absorbed the scolding, unable to retort as he had before. Then, abruptly changing the subject, he brought up Lu Jingzhi's own affairs. I hear you're going to marry that movie queen. Lu Jingzhi puffed out his chest. That's right, we're truly in love. Lu Zhengbai's voice was glacial. Not allowed. He added, if you insist on this marriage, there's a way. The terms remain the same. Leave the Lu family, suspension for 6 months, and self-reflection at home. Come back to me when you've thought it through. With that, he brushed past Lu Jingzhi, indifferent to any agreement or protest. Lu Zongye stood rooted to the spot, watching his father's retreating figure before turning to Lu Zhengbai, his voice laced with indignation. Dad, why does my brother get to interfere in my personal life? Lu Zhengbai's response was sharp. Because you caused this scandal. You've brought shame to our family. He jabbed a finger at his son. As for that actress, you better end things with her. Knowing she has a fiancé and still getting involved, she's clearly after your status. Now go and win Yinjin back. Lu Zongye gritted his teeth, the words forced through a strained smile. Fine, I'll go win her back. But inwardly he seethed. I won't let you get away with this, you little bitch. Jiang Yuning sat on the sofa, reading a script, when a servant announced, Miss Jiang, young Master Lu, is returning. She popped a potato chip into her mouth, thinking, so he's coming back. Did he really need to send a herald to announce his arrival? Suddenly, a thought struck her. Oh no, my homework is due today. I need to show him how much I appreciate Anta. She jumped up, nearly colliding with the servant in her haste. Turning to Sister Liang, who trailed behind her, she asked, Sister Liang, is there any cod or peeled shrimp in the fridge? Yes, I'll get them for you right away, Sister Liang replied, hurrying off. The bloodfish and shrimp were quickly retrieved. Brushing past the bewildered Sister Liang, Yuqing said, Sister Liang, you can go rest. I'll take care of the rest. Lu Jingzhi returned home to an empty living room. I'm home, he announced, his voice echoing in the stillness. He returned home, the aroma from the kitchen suddenly catching his attention. Curious, he made his way inside and found Jiang Yuning busy cooking, her face smudged with soot. Jiang Yuning, engrossed in her culinary task, turned to see Lu Jingzhi leaning against the doorframe. She wondered how he had returned so quickly. Seconds later, she rushed toward him excitedly, asking, Brother, when did you get back? Wait for me, okay? Lu Jingzhi stroked his chin, a thoughtful expression on his face. A moment later, he stepped forward, encircling her waist with his arms. Are you concocting another new dish? He inquired. Jiang Yuning pushed against his chest in mock protest. Can't you ever expect me to be up to something good? Lu Jingzhi reached out, intending to wipe the smudges from her face. But in the next instant, she vanished from his grasp, leaving Lu Jingzhi with his hand outstretched in midair. Turning, he saw Jiang Yuning swiftly returning with a plate of food. Lu Jingzhi sat at the table, waiting as Jiang Yuning served him. She placed the dish before him, adding, Try it. It's the 3-piece silver cod, specially made for you. Lu Jingzhi picked up a piece of fish. and placed it in his mouth. Jiang Yuning stood beside him anxiously, waiting for his verdict. "How is it?" she asked. "Annie told me before she passed that you really love this dish, so I secretly asked her to teach me how to make it." Lu Jingzhi glanced at her and said, "It's not quite the same." After a beat, he softened, adding, "But it does have hints of her flavor." Hearing this, Jiang Yuning brightened. "Really?" A moment later, he pulled her onto his lap, drawing her closer. "It's difficult, that's normal. But is this the proof you wanted to show me?" Jiang Yuning rested her head against his chest. "In my heart, you've always been a god I could never reach. I've always secretly studied your interests. I wanted to weave them into our relationship." Lu Jingzhi lifted her chin. "But from childhood to adulthood, you never showed any sign of affection for me. Your grandfather arranged your marriage, and you never protested." Jiang Yuning blushed at his words, quickly retorting, "How do you know I didn't protest? What about you? Weren't you the same?" Lu Jingzhi pinched her cheek, and Jiang Yuning winced, making a face. Rubbing the spot where he'd pinched her, she asked, "Why did you make me your woman? Was it out of pity? Or did you want to humiliate me?" Lu Jingzhi countered, "Since we met again, have I ever humiliated you?" Sitting on his lap, Jiang Yuning shook her head vehemently. Lu Jingzhi leaned closer, his voice hesitant. "It seems it's time to clear up the misunderstandings between us. It was a scene from the Lu family banquet when they were 14. Annie was ill, her body cold. I couldn't help but want to be near him, so I secretly went to see him." Jiang Yuning, young and naive at the time, saw Lu Jingzhi sitting sadly in a corner and approached him. "Brother, you seem to be in a bad mood. Can I?" But he recoiled. He only glanced at me then, coldly uttering 2 words, "Noisy." "When you were 15, I wrote you a letter in university, but I didn't sign it. I just wanted to quietly cherish the love in my heart, not asking for anything in return. Because so many people like you anyway. And what am I to you?" When she was 18, her grandfather arranged her engagement to Lu Jingyuan. "But the only person I wanted to marry was you." Lu Jingzhi gently stroked her hair. "All right, stop talking." Hearing this, Jiang Yuning sat up angrily and left without another word, unsure if she believed him. Suddenly, her arm was caught. Lu Jingzhi scooped her up into his arms. "I kept you by my side only because I wanted you to be my woman. There's no other reason." At this moment, they both blushed. Jiang Yuning could only manage, "I understand now. Please put me down first." But Lu Jingzhi didn't put her down. He simply carried her away. He carefully wiped her face with a towel. Lu Jingyuan, having finished, looked at her in the mirror and asked, "How has Lu Zunyan bullied you all these years?" Jiang Yuning snorted and replied, "Speaking of that jerk, I could talk from this year to next, and still not be finished." Jiang Yuning then asked, "You won't blame me for dealing with him now and making the Lu family lose face, will you?" She glanced at him, a blush rising on her cheeks. Lu Jingyuan asked, puzzled, "Blame you?" He lifted her chin. "That depends on how well you perform." After wiping her face clean, Lu Jingyuan suggested she stay out of the kitchen from now on. "I haven't eaten those dishes since my mother passed away. Not because of my mother, but because of other things that happened, like your situation." Jiang Yuning suddenly averted her gaze, a slight hesitation in her voice. To be fair, I also want to ask you something." Lu Jingyuan replied coldly with a single word, "Ask." She looked at Lu Jingyuan, blushing again. "Do you really like me?" Her hand clutched her heart, which was pounding as if it would leap out of her chest. Lu Jingyuan answered decisively and succinctly with one word, "Yes." Jiang Yuning barely managed to utter a single word before her lips were captured by his kiss. Their eyes met as they drew close. Lu Jingyuan asked, "Do you believe me now?" Jiang Yuning, finally regaining her composure, hurriedly covered her mouth. "You ambushed me." Lu Jingyuan tightened his arms around her waist. "What do you mean? Do I need your permission to kiss you?" "Fair enough," she said, wrapping her arms around Lu Jingyuan's neck and trembling as she kissed his lips again. Lu Jingyuan smiled at her, his hands slowly slipping the red dress from her shoulders. "Nothing happened between us that night because I went to a friend's house, but I knew a day like today wouldn't be far off." The next morning, as Jiang Yuning lay leisurely in bed reading, her phone suddenly rang. As soon as she answered, Lu Zunyan on the other end erupted in a furious tirade. "Jiang Yuning, if you block my number again, I swear you'll never see your grandfather again. Experienced in dealing with him, Jiang Yuning immediately pulled the phone away as soon as she saw who it was, letting him rant for a while before grimly asking, "Where have you taken my grandfather?" Lu Jingzhi continued to roar, "I've taken him to the Lu family to enjoy himself. You're taking revenge on me because you can't accept being dumped by me, right? If you want to be the head of the Lu family so badly, I'll let you have it." Jiang Yuning furiously hung up, cursing, "You bastard! I'll make you wait forever." That evening, at the Lu family residence, Lu Jingzhi and his mother were already waiting. Jiang Yuning arrived, dressed in a stunningly beautiful gown. A servant respectfully invited her in. "Miss Jiang, please enter." The moment they saw each other, Lu Jingzhi's foul mouth couldn't resist spewing curses. "You despicable woman, do you know what you've done? I thought you cared about that crazy old man, but I didn't expect you to make me wait all day for you." He snarled like a rabid dog. If his mother hadn't restrained him, Lu Jingzhi might have lunged at her. Zhongyi's mother entered the scene. Li Shudong stood behind her beloved son. She was displeased because Yuning was late today. Yunjin pretended to be afraid. Trembling weakly, she said, "I'm truly sorry. I never thought the Lu family would still accept me." She silently calculated that even if it was just for Bao Yu Wang outside the door watching the show, she had to play the part to the end. At that time, she had told Jingzhi, "I don't care. You have to back me up later." Jingzhi gently held her hand and said, "All right, you go in first." Actually, he also wants to see how the mother and daughter over there react to you after all these years. With everyone's support, Yuning was also happy. "Okay, brother." Zhongyi's sharp voice yanked Yuqing back to reality. Her words a sarcastic reminder of the Jiang family's persistent poverty. And yet, Yuqing had still managed to get her foot in the door of the esteemed Lu family. Madame Shu, Zhongyi's mother, began to speak. "Yuqing," she said, "if you still intend to marry into the Lu family, I truly don't want to have to tell you these unpleasant things." Yuqing sat obediently, bracing herself. Madame Shu then laid out a series of demands. First, due to the disparity in their social standing, after marriage, Yuqing would have to adhere strictly to the principles of wifely virtue, putting her husband first. Second, all income from her acting career would be handed over to a manager. Yuqing, a skilled actress, maintained a professional demeanor, but inwardly she fumed. Even a dog would refuse such terms, she thought, as if taking advantage of outsiders was somehow acceptable. Madame Shu continued. Third, even if Zhongyi associates with other women outside, it's purely business. Don't hold grudges. This was the most brazen demand yet. Yuqing, having heard enough, finally spoke, a hint of amusement in her voice. "Auntie," she said, inwardly scoffing, "if shamelessness were a virtue, you'd be invincible. Now that you mention it, if I recall correctly, before marrying into the Lu family, you were a jewelry saleswoman, weren't you?" Both Madame Shu and Zhongyi were taken aback. Zhongyi shouted, "Jiang Yuqing, my mother is scolding you. Why are you interrupting?" Yuqing dropped the pretense of obedience. "Lu Zhongyi," she said, "by your mother's logic, you're nothing but lowborn yourself. Do you think you're worthy of an emperor's throne? I've always wondered how the Lu family, with so many outstanding individuals, could produce a brute like you. It seems it's all due to your bloodline, isn't it?" Zhongyi yelled her name again, but Yuqing stood, taking a deep breath. She stepped closer to Madame Shu. "Madame Li," she addressed her by her maiden name, "your son is a lecherous troublemaker, a mama's boy that even a dog would find repulsive." Madame Shu shrieked, daring Yuqing to repeat herself. Of course, Yuqing retorted, even bringing up how Zhongyi, at 16, had wanted to break off their engagement. But she, Yuqing, had gone to her grandfather, begging him not to cancel the arrangement between her and Zhongyi. Zhongyi, enraged, shouted in her face, "Your Jiang family is finished. So, Jiang Yuqing, you're nothing but a nobody. The Jiang family is finished." Yuqing echoed, "So, what if it is? Someone like you deserves to be looked down upon. Who you love or marry has nothing to do with me. Give me back my grandfather. I don't have time to play your games." Zhongyi continued to curse at Yuqing, threatening to make her life a living hell. Yuqing didn't back down. "Well, you might not know this," she challenged, "but I have plenty of dirt on you, too. You want to go up against me? Preposterous." The housekeeper was about to greet Jingzhi, but he signaled him to stay silent. Zhongyi resorted to force, but just as he lunged, Jingzhi stepped in to block him. The Lu CEO, holding back the bully with one hand and Yuqing protectively with the other, addressed Zhongyi coolly. "Lu Zhongyi, do you still want that hand?" He looked so striking that Yuqing almost lost her breath. With a flick of his wrist, Jingzhi sent Zhongyi sprawling. Madame Shu rushed over, her face dark. "Jingzhi," she demanded, "when did you get back?" Ignoring her, Jingzhi spoke to Yuqing. "I heard everything." Madame Shu continued to berate him. "Jingzhi, Zhongyi is still your younger brother. You wouldn't side with an outsider, would you?" Jingzhi's patience had clearly run out. He called for the housekeeper, ordering him to have both Madame Shu and Zhongyi's belongings thrown out of the Lu house. He then instructed the finance department to freeze their bank accounts. "The Lu family isn't a zoo," he stated coldly. "We don't keep animals." Madame Shu raged. "Lu Jingzhi, I'm your second aunt. You can't treat your elders like this. Even my husband never treated me this way." Jingzhi gave a faint smile. "When you sit in my position," he said, "you'll have the right to question my decisions. But today, even if my uncle were here, both you and your son would still have to leave. Housekeeper, see to it." The housekeeper immediately ordered the servants to pack Jiang Yuning and her son's luggage. Yuning asked about her grandfather again. Lu Jing led her away, saying he was in the living room and would have the housekeeper look after her tonight. "Tomorrow, I'll take you back to the hospital. Go to the study and wait for me now. I'll prepare some food for you." While the two were being affectionate, Shu Dong angrily called her husband. Yuning walked to the door of Lu Jing's study. She wondered what the password was. Then she started entering 49 sequences, from Lu Jing's birthday to his mother's birthday. But none of them worked. Suddenly, Lu Jing appeared. He saw the number she pressed and realized the password was her birthday. Before she could recover from her surprise, he had already pulled her into his arms. The CEO pressed the beauty against the door, his voice tinged with amusement. "I didn't expect you wouldn't know. You mentioned breaking off the engagement before." Yuning blushed. "I told you you misunderstood me, but you still didn't believe me. I've brought it up to my family every year since I was 16, but then things kept happening and I haven't had the energy to deal with it. However, that despicable Jiang Yuning always comes to hurt me." Seeing her distress, he lifted her chin and kissed her. Then he kissed lower, and a knock on the door dispelled the passion of the moment. Bringing the latest news, the person outside says second young master has returned. Lu Jing instructed, "You go down first. I'll come down later." After listening, she said, "Okay." Lu Jing left the study, leaving her alone. Yuning blushed, thinking, could this kind of intimacy really happen between her and a celestial being? But she reminded herself to stay calm. Quietly picking up her slippers, she sneaked out to watch the drama unfold. Yuning sat on the balcony and looked down. The play began. Zheng Bai said, "Lu Jing, for my sake, let them go. They won't have another chance." Madame Shu Dong held a suitcase, likely about to be kicked out. Undaunted, Shu Dong shouted, "Lu Zhengbai, are you even a man? What do you mean by begging her forgiveness?" "I don't care. I'm the Lu family's daughter-in-law. No one has the right to kick me out." Lu Jingzhi smiled faintly. "Not wanting to leave? That's not impossible. Housekeeper, arrange for them to stay in the servants' quarters." Ignoring Shu Dong's yelling, "Who are you treating like servants now?" Lu Jing said firmly, "Either leave now or stay in the servants' quarters. It's fortunate I saw them today, but if grandfather saw them, second uncle, how would you even plead for mercy?" This left second uncle speechless, so he could only obey Lu Jing's words. So he announced, "From today onwards, the Lu family no longer has a third young master, nor a second madam. Now, they will only be treated as servants and subordinates. No one regarded them as masters at all." After witnessing the whole scene, Yuning's eyes were filled with admiration. Indeed, when a celestial being gets angry, not a blade of grass grows for 10 miles around. Just as he glanced over, Lu Jing's eyes met hers. The two gazed at each other deeply. To him, Yuning was just like she had been back then. He sighed silently in his heart. Does this little wildcat really not know how provocative her actions are? After dinner, Guji called her. "Did that beast Lu Jing give you any trouble?" "Ah, that guy has already been turned into a sculpture." Hearing this, Guji breathed a sigh of relief. "All right, if there's nothing else, I'll hang up." As soon as the call ended, someone pulled Yuning away. Lu Jing had sat down at some point, pulling Yuning into his arms. Yuning asked shyly, "When did you come up?" Lu Jing said, "Just now." Hearing this, Yuning said sarcastically, "You did this for me, didn't you? You only did it for yourself." He had the two of them look directly at each other. A hint of a smile played on Lu Jingyuan's lips. This frightened Yuning somewhat, and she turned her head away, unable to meet his gaze. "Don't look at me like that." Suddenly, Jingyuan grabbed her head and kissed her forcefully, without warning. His hands began to wander, sliding down to her waist. Sensing danger, Yuning quickly pushed Jingyuan away, explaining, "It's not time yet. My day isn't over." Hearing this, Jingyuan calmly replied, "Since you already know, hurry back to your room." Instead of returning to his own bedroom, he picked her up and carried her to where a single bed sat. Seeing Jingyuan's intention to sleep there, Yuning exclaimed in surprise, "You're going to sit here too?" This bed is too small, but Jingyuan didn't seem to care. The thought of having to lie on top of him to sleep mortified her. Jingyuan, beside her, prompted, "Or do you want to go back to my room to sleep?" Hearing this, she quickly shook her head, indicating she didn't want that at all. Jingyuan seized the opportunity, lying down and pulling the bewildered Yuning into his arms. In this position, how could she possibly sleep? So, for convenience's sake, she decided to move to Jingyuan's room. He immediately told her to go take a shower. Yuning hurriedly tried to go alone, but how could he possibly let her do that? Strange sounds emanated from the bathroom. Jingyuan forcefully carried Yuning to a corner and kissed her. The situation escalated, prompting Yuning to quickly push him away. Slightly breathless, she couldn't help but ask, "Didn't you say we were going to shower? Hurry up and shower." A hint of a smile played on Jingyuan's face as he replied, "All right." Seeing him like this, Yuning became wary. This wasn't a normal posture. It was clear he intended to seduce her today. Jingyuan knew she was using her period as an excuse, but how could he resist? His hand slipped beneath her skirt. Deceptive, yet Yuning still wanted to argue. Anyone who still resorts to force during a woman's special time is a scum. No one could fool Jingyuan. He knew her period was over, so there was no need to avoid him anymore. Yuning turned her face away, saying, "I haven't yet, and I even don't know if you like me." Jingyuan moved closer, teasing her with a smile. "You've already taken the money, and now you want to renege? I think you should understand my feelings by now. You've seen some things, but you also need to adapt," Jingyuan whispered her ear. "So slowly get used to my place in your heart. As for your body." Seeing him drawing closer, Yuning shyly pushed him away. "How about we go back to the bedroom?" she suggested. Quickly returning to the bedroom, the two kissed passionately, collapsing onto the bed. Yuning took the initiative, lying on top of him. They trembled together for a moment, finally giving Yuning a chance to catch her breath. Jingyuan said with a wicked grin, "Your friend came at the wrong time. I really want to devour you right now." Then he abruptly sat up with a mischievous smile and leaned in towards Yuning again. Yuning turned away, puzzled. "Are you really going to do that?" Jingyuan asked. "What are you afraid of? You even don't dare to look at me. Or are you waiting for something?" Yuning hesitated, then denied it. "No, I'm not." She cursed inwardly. My brother really knows how to tease. If it weren't for what happened today, I would have been completely devoured by him already. After a while, Jingyuan asked, "If you had successfully broken off the engagement back then, would you have considered suggesting him to your family as a replacement for your fiancé?" Without hesitation, Yuning replied, "Honestly, no." A tinge of sadness touched her thoughts. If the Jiang family hadn't fallen, maybe I would have had the courage. But the Jiang family is no more, and you're like the full moon in the sky. Suddenly, Jingyuan asked, "What if I told you I once thought about taking you away?" Yuning froze for a few seconds. She immediately turned her head and asked, but Jingzhi pursed his lips and said nothing. "I was just kidding. So what are your plans for the future?" Yunjin thought to herself, indeed, with his status, why would he need to run away? She spoke, explaining her intention to find a better entertainment company to sign with, hone her acting skills, and seize the opportunity to reclaim her title as Best Actress. And then, when you're tired of me, I'll find someone to marry. Jingzhi remained silent, lost in thought, unable to fall asleep for a long time. On the morning of the 6th day, Yuning was still asleep when the insistent ringing of her phone roused her. Still drowsy, she mumbled a hello into the receiver. Gucci's excited voice burst through the speaker. "Holy crap, there's some juicy gossip." Hearing this, Yuning snapped awake. She unlocked her phone and saw a trending photo. Ms. Ava, the vice president of Dongheng Group. An unreadable expression flickered across Yuning's face. Memories flooded back. The year her father was declared missing, her grandfather fell gravely ill, and her mother ran off with another man. Even more disgusting, when her mother fled, she'd taken all of the Mu Group's money, leaving behind a mountain of debt. Just then, Jingzhi woke up and asked anxiously, "Yuning, what's wrong?" Yuning turned to him and said, "Brother, I want to go home." Jingzhi gently pulled her into a hug. I know what you want to do, he said softly. Do whatever you want. I'll always support you. Hearing this, Yuning smiled inwardly. Since her brother agreed, it was time to teach her dear mother a lesson. Currently trending were photos of Su Yushi and Fu Yahui. With Su Yushi's family background now exposed, it turned out this was her mother. The revelation of Su Yushi's wealthy background, her formidable maternal lineage, and her multi-million-dollar mansion set the internet ablaze. The comments section exploded. No one had expected their Yushi to be a wealthy heiress. She had been so low-key. Their Hua Hua, Yushi's nickname, was not someone those lowlifes could compare to. Those who had previously badmouthed Hua Hua and were now trying to curry favor with her were told to spontaneously combust. Their best actress was truly loaded. Su Yushi quickly released a statement, thanking the media for their concern. I hope everyone will respect the privacy of artists and not disturb my family. Gucci chuckled, amused. The daughter of a mistress, repeatedly hyped up by Chunchi Entertainment. Su Yushi is eager to label herself a wealthy heiress, but does she even know you're Ava's real daughter? Yuning smiled. She probably doesn't, but I'm quite disdainful of being her daughter. Gucci asked, how dare Fu Yahui show her face so brazenly in Luo City? Yuning replied, even Su Yushi doesn't know her stepmother's real name is Fu Yahui. And Fu Yahui didn't anticipate that Su Yushi just wanted to use her to hype herself up, right? Isn't it interesting? A mistress's daughter, like Su Yushi, can be touted as a flower. So wouldn't I, the legitimate daughter, be praised to the heavens? Gucci chuckled. From the looks of it, your guess isn't unfounded. Otherwise, why would she change her name to Ava and even get plastic surgery? Yinjin smiled. Another good show is about to begin. I'm certainly looking forward to meeting Ms. Ava. What do you think Hawk's expression will be when he sees us? Gucci said, it'll be interesting. However, Dongheng is expanding in the US, so he's going abroad for a few days. During this time, you'd better find a protector and keep yourself safe. Yuning laughed. Don't worry, I'm a pariah now. No one wants to mess with me. She thought to herself, I'm a force of nature right now. I'm ready to take on anyone. Nobody better try to make me uncomfortable. Meanwhile, in a villa on the outskirts of the city, Ava, formerly known as Fu Yahui, was furiously questioning Su Yushi. Do you even consider me your mother anymore? Why did you expose our relationship without my permission? Just like Mom always said, you can do anything you want in this entertainment industry, but you absolutely cannot reveal your family background. Do you know how much trouble this will bring me? She feigned a pitiful expression. Mom, you're my mother after all. The media didn't write anything wrong. Besides, I've been involved in some scandals recently, so I really need your support. Please stop blaming me. Enough, Fu Yuhua yelled angrily. Quiet. I'll contact your entertainment company later to retract those drafts. Q Yushi, I'm so disappointed in you. Then she hung up the phone, gritting her teeth. This won't do. She didn't get to this position easily. She absolutely cannot let the past lead to her downfall. At this critical juncture, at this very moment, Yuning smirked coldly. Indeed, being a stepchild is different. Stingy to the extreme. Isn't it just a bit of self-promotion? What's the big deal? Later that evening, Yuning walked out and happened to see Jingzhi taking off his outer robe with the help of a servant. She walked over and said, Can you help me find someone? Jingzhi asked, Who? Yuning replied, A former lawyer for the Jiang family. Jingzhi asked curiously, Why are you looking for him? Yuning said, I want to ask him for help. I really want to know exactly how much money the Jiang family owed back then. She thought to herself, I also want to find my benefactor from that time. Jingzhi asked her in a low voice, Now that you've found them, do you have the means to repay them? Yuning retorted, How do you know I can't afford it? Second brother, tell me, do you want to help me or not? She was a little suspicious. Why does it feel like second brother already knows how much the Jiang family owed? At this moment, Yuning leaned closer and teased, That depends on your performance. Yuning asked, puzzled, What performance? Jingzhi scooped her up in his arms. Yuning blushed, as she always did whenever they returned to the Yulong Pavilion. It seems like he knows nothing but how to cling to me all day long. Jingzhi smiled faintly and said, Men always give their all when it comes to teaching women. Then he gently carried her into the room. Their lips met in another passionate kiss. Yuning struggled to push him away. Wait, brother. If you kiss me until I faint, you'll be the one at a disadvantage. Yingqi chuckled. You can't escape. Yuning didn't back down. How am I doing? Do you want to help me find someone? My mother, that woman who ran off with that man, is back and has become the vice president of Dongyang. I won't let her live so comfortably. Lu Jingzhi, my desire for revenge is strong. Yunqing sneered. What a coincidence. Mine is too. He then picked her up and said, let's take a bath first. After turning on the water, they kissed again, making Yunqing sigh. Kissing as if you want to wear my lips raw. Jingzhi murmured, accept it. Isn't this what you intend to use to please me? A while later, she asked breathlessly, darling, will you help me find that person or not? Jingzhi looked at her and smiled. This little girl really knows how to ignite a fire. Scene change. Someone asked a security guard, 9 years ago, on a snowy day, did you receive a pink letter here? The guard hesitated. 9 years ago? I'm not sure. The girl asked again. The letter was quite presumptuous. Could you think about it more carefully? The guard thoughtfully stroked his chin. Then he suddenly exclaimed, I remember. There was a little girl holding a pink envelope, waiting at the school gate for Lu, a classmate, for 3 days and 4 nights. It was winter, and she just kept squatting in the snow. Asked her anything, she just shook her head. Only said she was waiting for Lu Jingzhi, but during that time, that classmate wasn't at school at all. The girl took out a picture of Yunqing and asked, was it this girl? The guard nodded repeatedly. Yes, it was this girl. It had to be said, the girl was utterly devoted. Standing in the swirling snow, her body numb with cold, she still huddled beneath the branches for shelter. That's what made her particularly memorable. After confirming the information, the girl immediately called CEO Lu of Huayu World Entertainment. After hearing everything, CEO Lu nodded and said, I understand. Bring the old gentleman back. The person on the other end immediately replied, understood. After hanging up, he turned to look at Jingzhi, sleeping soundly on the bed. He returned to the bedside, held her, and murmured, back then, were you also this disheartened after accumulating so much disappointment? After an unknown amount of time, Inning opened her eyes, thinking, not disheartened at all. I've always been willing. That morning at the Chinchi Entertainment Building, a voice rang out. Persuade your mother to go out for a walk. It's best to get her cooperation first. We'll arrange for the media to film an interview. Especially when they mention her, I hope she'll sing her praises. It'll be very helpful for her career. Hui frowned and replied, that's difficult. Because of yesterday's publicity incident, she scolded me. How could she possibly agree to act alongside me? The director questioned, isn't she your mother? She won't even help with such a small matter. Then when the media comes knocking, just pretend you don't know anything. I don't believe she won't help you under those circumstances. She's lost countless job opportunities since the scandal with the Lu family's young master broke out, you know? Does she still want her Best Actress title or not? Seize this opportunity. If you do well, your career can quickly return to its former glory. Huayu World thought, if I can really use my relationship with Fu Yahui to clear my name, then this deal is solid. Back at Jingzhi's residence, Yunjin slowly opened her eyes, looking at the handsome face before her, and thought, I must be having a spring dream again. With that thought, she embraced him and kissed him, feeling a little puzzled. Why don't I feel addicted at all after doing it? Unexpectedly, at this moment, Jingzhi also woke up and said contentedly, you're so obedient. I agree. Inning was startled, realizing then that this wasn't a dream. Jingzhi sat up and said, I'll help you find lawyer Jiang. Inning hugged him excitedly. Really? Jingzhi said, I'll give you an update tonight, but I have something to do and will be home late. You don't have to wait for me. Inning replied ingratiatingly, I'll wait for you, no matter how late. Jingzhi put his arms around her and chuckled, don't be a nuisance. Yunjin replied, how could I be a nuisance? Jingzhi teased, you're just afraid that without me, there won't be anyone to help you finish that. After teasing her for a while, he got up and left. Yunjin sat on the bed, recalling how yesterday he had been so rough with her, biting and nibbling. Yet today, he was so gentle. Could it be that he was feeling guilty? A while later, she went out to check her phone and saw a trending post. Lu Zanya, the Playboy, Huayu World, award-winning actress with a prestigious foreign degree. Jenny Inning Vaz, a graduate of an ordinary domestic college. Someone commented, if I were Lu Zanya, I'd cheat too. Putting Huayu World and Jenny Een together is an insult to Huayu World. After reading it, Een felt like spitting blood. Am I really that bad? It seems she had to ask Lu Jingzhi tonight who was more beautiful. With the fans nowadays completely brainwashed, she commented on the post, if the heavenly king's daughter barged into someone else's home, would she be called a mistress? She thought, let's just poke fun at it for now. If Can Entertainment wants to drag me into this publicity stunt, don't blame me for retaliating. The comment quickly received a reply, tisk tisk tsk. Jiang Yuning, you're just jealous, aren't you? Who told you to be so poor and stubborn? Do you even understand what being well-matched means? It's only natural that Mr. Lu left you. The Jiang family has been gone for so many years, and you still think you're some kind of princess? Get out of the way. His mother is the vice president of Eastern Airlines. But you, Yunjin rapidly typed on her keyboard. She closed her laptop and chuckled to herself. I left my contact information in the verification message. My mother will definitely contact me. Where's my birth mother? You'll find out soon. Soon, she saw Ava send her a message. Yuning, it's Mom. This is my phone number. Let's meet, Yuning replied. Broken Butterfly Cafe at 3 p.m. Don't be late. Meanwhile, Huyue was lying down with a face mask on when her phone rang. She answered and heard, no need to buy a gift. This afternoon at 3 p.m., your mother will be at Tokyo Deep Coffee. You just need to pretend to run into her. We'll arrange for reporters to be there. Huyusher thought to herself, my shrewd stepmother definitely won't believe this is just a coincidence. She'll find a way to make trouble for me again later. Soon, it was afternoon in Jingzhi. Yunjin put on her beautiful dress, ready to go out. On her delicate fingers, she twirled her keys happily as she walked downstairs. However, just as a servant came over and called out, Miss Jiang, Yuning saw the ultra-thin Din Night sanitary napkin set in the servant's hands, and her face flushed with sarcasm. The servant smiled and said, Miss, don't be shy. This is also a form of protection from the young master. Yunjin forced a smile and said, Sister Liang, let's talk later. I have to go catch up with my brother. She thought to herself, that man is so over the top. The servant behind her thought, in surprise, Sir, you can actually tolerate this? At Toei Deep, a noblewoman walked in. Yuning was also sitting there waiting. She looked up and recognized the woman. It was Fu Yahue, the deputy director of NG Chinji Corporation. Fu Yahue sat down and said with a gentle smile, Yuning, you've grown up quite a bit. Yuning replied, yes, it's been many years. Fu Yahue took off her glasses and asked, why don't you call me Mom? Yuning responded in a low voice, I thought you didn't need me anymore. Inwardly, she cursed, how is she worthy? Fu Yahue lit a cigarette and said, Yuning, I know you blame me. Remember when your father disappeared? I couldn't sleep at night. I almost drove myself crazy. Leaving was also a choice I had to make. Whatever you want to make up for, I will do it for you. Yuning glanced at her and replied, I'm doing well now. Fu Yahue leaned closer and said, don't lie to me anymore. Now you have nothing. If you want to sign with any agency, I'll help you. Yuning shook her head. No need. I just want to ask, do you really hope? Yusher's stepmother, Fu Yahue, replied, it was just a coincidence. Anyway, I have a lot of money now. I'll support you in whatever you want to do. I'll find a way to make up for all the hardship you've suffered. Yuning pretended to be happy and said, I want to go to Hu Yusher's company. Fu Yahue nodded, telling her she would have her mother arrange it. However, Yuning, the fact that I left all those years ago absolutely cannot be revealed to the media. I really had my own difficulties, can you? Yuning said obediently, I understand. I won't talk nonsense to the media. Hearing this, Fu Yahue smiled. Yuning, you've really grown up. In the future, I will definitely make you famous. Yuning gave a fake smile. Thank you, Mom. At this moment, someone shouted, Hu Yusher is here. Let's hurry over. Fu Yuhua stood up in astonishment. Hu Yusher feigned surprise, asking, Mother, what are you doing here? Yuning smiled silently, watching the scene unfold, recalling how Xiang Ming had told her that Chunchi had already sent people to watch Madame Ava's every move, and he had simply taken the opportunity to sell the information to them. Hui Yusher, spotting Yuning, cried out in shock, It's you. Are you here to tell my mother about Mr. Lu? People like you, without a mother's upbringing, truly have no manners. Fu Yuhua, hearing this, rebuked her. What are you saying? Hui Yusher replied, Mother, don't pay attention to her. She's just a minor celebrity. She doesn't understand anything. Please don't misunderstand me because of her. Yuning stood up with a look of amusement. Hui Yusher, she asked, is stealing men a hereditary habit in your family? Ryushi scoffed. My affair, yours, it's just a private matter between three people. Making a fuss won't benefit anyone. You should know, my mother is the vice president of Dongheng Group. If you know what's good for you, you'll stop playing these despicable tricks in front of us. And what if I don't? Yuning replied with a cold smile. Hui Yusher immediately raised her hand and lunged forward. Then today, I'll teach you a lesson. I'll tear that foul mouth of yours to shreds. Just then, Fu Yuhua reached out from behind and grabbed her hand. Hui Yusher struggled, saying, Mother, I just want to teach this bitch a lesson. She's too arrogant. Fu Yuhua promptly slapped her hard across the face. face. Her expression was utterly glacial. Hui Yushi, still bewildered, cried out, "Mother!" Yuning watched with amusement, a smile playing on her lips. Fu Yuhua began to speak. "Listen to me, Hui Yushi. You're only my stepdaughter. Yuning is my biological daughter." Hui Yushi's face drained of color. How is that possible? Mother, you're joking, right? How could Jiang Yuning be your daughter? Fu Yuhua walked over to Yuning's side. "Nothing is impossible. Yesterday you used me for publicity, and I didn't pursue it. But today you brought reporters again. Do you really think I'm that easy to fool? You have truly disappointed me." The reporters behind them murmured amongst themselves. "Unless it's a ghost, there's no way these photos can be explained away." Fu Yuhua took her daughter's hand. "Yuning, let's go." Yuning passed by Hui Yushi, giving her a nonchalant, contemptuous smile. Hui Yushi gritted her teeth in fury. "Jiang Yuning, you despicable woman." The scene quickly spread online. "Oh my god, this is so dramatic. This actress is putting on quite a show." The photographer, Jiang Ming, chuckled to himself. What a scoop. He managed to get Hui Yushi's older sister's autograph. A little while later, in the parking lot, Fu Yuhua asked, "Where are you staying now?" "I'll take you back." Yuning smiled. "I'm staying with a friend. I drove myself here, so I can go back on my own." Fu Yuhua continued. "Once I've taken care of things, I'll pave the way for you. Then you can move in with me." Yuning declined. "It's already convenient enough living where I am. Moving back in with you might cause you a lot of trouble and gossip." Fu Yuhua patted her head approvingly. "You're very sensible." Getting out of the car, Yuning's expression returned to its usual coldness. She thought to herself, "So you still believe I'm the same naive girl I used to be?" Meanwhile, the internet was abuzz. Before the real daughter even appeared, the adopted one was already showing off. Turns out the real daughter is actually Jiang Yuning. Oh my god, thinking about that trending topic about the actress before, it's so embarrassing. It's like a huge slap in the face. What a show. Hui Yushi roared furiously in her phone. The director beside him furrowed his brow. Why do I feel like I've been tricked? I should have confirmed this source first. Hayashi clenched his teeth, his mind racing. It's over now. I can't reach Lazonia, and my stepmother is the enemy's birth mother. Up in the luxurious Hilton Hotel, a party buzzed with activity. Jingzhi was nursing a drink when his phone buzzed. He saw a message from Yunjin and smiled. "Where's the party? I'll come get you." Just then, someone approached, draping an arm around him. "Hey, Jingzhi, you just smiled. Let me see what it was. What could make young Master Lu smile? I want to see too." Jingzhi pushed him away. "You've had too much to drink," the young man replied. "I know you have a woman in your heart. That's why you rejected my sister's confession. But, as a brother, let me give you some advice. Our marriages are just sacrifices for business alliances. My sister, regardless, has seen through you. Right, Yuning?" Yuning chuckled in response. "If it wasn't her, I wouldn't consider anyone." The young man groaned. Such a hopeless romantic. Outside in the Hilton's parking lot, Yuning approached, a stylish wide-brimmed hat concealing her features. She reached for the car door. Jingzhi was already inside, waiting. The hat was tossed aside. Yuning slid shyly into the seat beside Jingzhi. "Jingzhi Gij," she murmured. Jingzhi chuckled, a playful glint in his eyes. "What brings you here? Do you know what's going to happen next?" Yuning replied, "Of course. Since I'm here, it means I'm ready to devour you." Jingzhi lifted a hand, gently tilting her chin up. He smiled. "You're so bold because you know I adore you." Yuning nodded, a knowing smile playing on her lips. "Let's go home, you drunkard." She shifted, patting her thigh. "Rest your head here," she said softly. Jingzhi stared at her for a moment. He seemed slightly dazed. 5 minutes later, to his surprise, Yuning had fallen asleep against his leg. Jingzhi muttered under his breath, "Lazy cat. Who's the drunk one now?" Soon they arrived home. A servant approached. "Headmaster, Miss Jiang asked me to assist you." Jingzhi glanced at the sleeping Yuning. "Don't touch her." He carried Yuning inside. The servant behind him smirked. The headmaster's possessiveness is truly frightening. Just then, Yuning's eyes fluttered open against his chest. "Awake?" Jingzhi asked. "Take a bath before you sleep." Yuning wrapped her arms tighter around him, a mischievous smile on her face. "No need. Why don't you help me?" Jingzhi chuckled wryly. She's getting bolder and bolder. Soon, they were both submerged in the bath. "Are you going to see your mother today?" he asked. "I not only saw her," Yuning replied. "I used her to punish you, sure. It was nothing really." Jingzhi glanced at her. "Do you hate her that much?" Yuning nodded. I do, and I'll be even more ruthless in the future. Looking at the man before her, she reminded herself, hey, don't get in too deep like that girl. Jingzhi reached out, pulling her closer and wrapping her in a towel. He smiled. You seemed lost in thought. What's wrong? Want to try? Yuning shook her head vigorously. No, I'm scared. Jingzhi raised an eyebrow. Scared of what? Yuning blushed. Scared of the pain, what else? Meanwhile, at Yusher's house, she knelt on the floor, sobbing. Mother, I didn't know Yuning was your daughter. If I had known, I wouldn't have been with Lizonia, let alone gotten pregnant with his child. From now on, I'll fulfill my duties as an older sister and cherish Yuning. Madame Yahweh frowned. Whose child are you carrying? Yusher hesitated. Lizonia's, she confessed. I just found out, Yunjin said, and, Mother, the news of your meeting with Jenny Yuning was deliberately leaked. Otherwise, how will my agency know? She paused, a question hanging in the air. Are you saying Yuning leaked it? Mrs. Yu's face hardened. Mother, she's always hated me. If this gets out, it benefits her the most, doesn't it? Yahweh, her brow furrowed, remained silent, considering Yunjin's words. They weren't entirely without merit. The next day, Yuning lay in bed. Actually, she murmured, your attitude towards me back then made me think you hated me. Jingzhi questioned, you're saying I acted like I hated you? Yunji nodded. Isn't that true? Jingzhi reached out and caressed her face. If you don't ask, how would you know my feelings? From now on, you're not allowed to think about leaving me again. If you don't like me, then let it continue like this. If you don't like me, I'll make you love me, down to your very bones. Yuning smiled faintly. Are you dreaming? She asked. If you didn't hate me, why were you so cold to me, making me suffer for so long? Jingzhi replied. You were Lao San's fiancé at the time, and besides, I didn't know you had opposed that marriage. Yuning embraced him, a smile playing on her lips. So, second brother, were you jealous? But if we're together, can we slow down the progress of our relationship? Jingzhi rolled over, pinning her beneath him. What did you say? He teased, a grin spreading across his face. Yunjin pouted playfully. I don't care. I'm going to ask for help online. The title will be Overbearing CEO Always Wants to Sleep with Me. How can I resist? Jingzhi reached out and touched her lips. You're making me want to kiss you, he said. Just then, a servant knocked on the door. Sir, it's time. Jingzhi lowered his head and gently kissed Yunjin. Then, turning, he dressed. Wait for me tonight, he said. I have something to ask you. Yuning rested her hand on the side of the bed, a smile playing on her lips. Clearly, a troubled man is not to be trifled with, she mused. Later, outside, Jiang Ming came running excitedly. Sister Yunjin, he called. Yunjin removed her glasses. What's the rush, Jiang Ming? She asked. What's the matter? Jiang Ming carefully surveyed their surroundings. Then, leaning closer, he lowered his voice. Sister Yuning, I just received some news. Lu Zone isn't actually a member of the Lu family. Yuning looked at him, puzzled. Where did you hear that? You're studying journalism, right? Jiang Ming began. Yesterday, after I finished what you asked me to do, I went back to school for lunch and heard my senior talking about it. Remember what that older woman said yesterday? When I went to the nursing home to visit some elderly people, I heard that an old woman once helped her daughter switch her baby with someone else's in exchange for money. Now she feels guilty about the switched granddaughter and wants to make amends. Jiang Ming asked, surprised. Is that true? That woman cautiously replied. This might involve the Lu family. Who would dare spread rumors? Just take it as a joke and forget about it. Jiang Ming continued to Yunjin. I was afraid I misheard, so I went to that nursing home early this morning and met the old lady to confirm. Indeed, the one who was switched was the Lu family's third young master. She also revealed a lot of other details. Yuning frowned slightly. It might be true, she thought aloud. Back then, Li Shudong was just a jewelry saleswoman, an ordinary person. So how could she marry into the Lu family? Of course, it was because of Sun. She pondered for a moment. Don't reveal this for now, she instructed Jiang Ming. First, go and see how that adopted niece is doing. We can't disturb other people's lives. Jiang Ming reached into his pocket. Don't worry, leave this to me, he assured her. But, Yuning, can you sign a few more autographs for me this time? Yunjin chuckled inwardly. Doesn't this kid have any other hobbies? She thought. She picked up the pen and paper, asking curiously, why are you so obsessed with my autograph? Ji Yamming replied with a smile, because I have a feeling that sooner or later you'll be world famous. Yuning chuckled. Children really knew how to flatter. She quickly handed the pen and paper back to him. Here you go. Yuning accepted them happily. Thank you, Sister Yuning. I'll be going now. Just then, she received a message from Yahoo, informing her that Yuning had gone to the Banshan villa, and she should be careful to avoid the media. Madame Fu was stirring up trouble again. The program was about to start, yet there she was, hesitantly ringing the doorbell of the villa. The person who opened the door was, surprisingly, Yukuei. The moment the door opened, Yukuei called out, "Mom, Yuning is here." Yahui sat on a chair and waved her hand. Yuning, Gomein. Yuning had barely stepped inside when she pointed at Yukuei with feigned displeasure. "Mom, why is she here?" Yuning, no matter what, she's still your sister. Even if she's made mistakes, we're still family, and family should stand together against outsiders. If you want to sign with Chunsher Entertainment, you'll need your sister to act as a bridge to connect you. Yusher chimed in, "Mom, don't worry. I've already spoken with the company, and they've agreed to sign with Yuning." Yuning pursed her lips, thinking, what game are these two playing? At this point, Yahui stood up and continued. "Yuning, actually, your sister is pregnant with the Lu family's third young master's child. She's quite frail and can't have an abortion. So, please forgive your sister. Of course, if you can't forgive her, we'll think of something else." Yuning asked coldly, calculating something. Planning on having another illegitimate child? Hearing this, Yusher immediately became angry. "Jiang Yuning, what do you mean by that?" Yuning sat gracefully in her chair. "What do I mean? I just see that you've stolen my mother and my fiancé, and now you want me to kindly forgive you. Don't you think mother is saying this to compensate me?" Yahui coughed lightly, a hint of anger in her voice. "Jiang Yuning, don't look for trouble. Can't you just get along with your sister? I can see that she's trying to stress your unborn child. You said she was ungrateful. Now do you believe it?" Yuning stood up and replied, "If this is the only reason you're helping me get into Chunsher Entertainment, then let me tell you I don't need it." Hearing this, Yahui gave an awkward laugh. "Yuning, we all need to calm down. Your sister is pregnant. That's a fact. Just be magnanimous and help your sister through this difficult time. In the future, she'll only have your best interests at heart." Yuning stormed off angrily. "Dream on. Do you know how she and Lu Jingzhi tried to harm me? I'll never forget it." Seeing her leave, Yusher immediately revealed a resentful expression. "Mom, look at her." Yahui gritted her teeth. "Don't worry about her for now. Call Lu Tongda and tell him the news. As for the marriage, I'll discuss it with the Lu family. As for your sister, I'll think of something else." After leaving the house, Yuning smiled secretly, scheming. If she wants to marry him, let her. Once Lu Jingzhi's true identity is exposed, she'll know what it means to fall into hell. That evening, back at Yulan Court, after loosening his tie, Yinqing asked, "Why are you home so late?" Jingzhi sat down beside her wearily. "I went to old Lu's place." Yuning was a little surprised. Had the news reached his ears so quickly? It seemed Yahui hadn't just saved herself, but had also conveniently helped Lu Jingzhi. "It's a shame. I received news that Lu Jingzhi isn't the Lu family's biological child, but I don't have any proof yet." Jingzhi put his arm around her and replied, "If you want to know if it's true, it's very simple. He'll have the housekeeper collect a DNA sample and compare it with your second uncle's," Yunjin said with a smile. "The truth will come out, but if you already know the truth, you're not allowed to act rashly. They want to get engaged, and you just need to agree. Let CEO Lu and Yusher have their moment of triumph. The real drama unfolds at the crucial moment. Promise me, okay?" Yingqi smiled. Since his grandfather had intervened, he naturally wouldn't interfere. Yuning was very satisfied. "That's enough. Anything else?" Jingji asked. "You said you'd tell me where the Jiang family lawyer is when you get home tonight. The driver will take you tomorrow." Just then, a scene from her TV show was playing. "This is great." Yinjin pointed at the screen. "What do you think of my acting?" Jingji scooped her up. "It looks vulgar, lacking cultural depth," he teased. Yunjin playfully scolded him. "So you're saying you're cultured, huh? Thinking of ways to get me into bed every day." Yuning laughed and pulled him towards the bathroom. "You know," she murmured, "I used to think you were so fragile, like a little lamb unable to resist. But now, you've given me a whole new perspective." She whispered in his ear, "I'm a fox who knows how to bewitch. Let's make a bet," Jingji challenged. "Within 10 days, you'll make me want you. Do you dare?" Yunjin smiled confidently. "I've been single for 24 years. You think I can't last 10 days? Are you sure, brother? Jingzhi picked her up, his voice brimming with confidence. Of course. He placed her back in the bathtub. He lowered his head and kissed her. Then, with a playful smirk, he asked, "You said I wasn't sure, right?" Suddenly, a look of surprise crossed Jingzhi's face. He lifted Yuning's shoulder, his brow furrowed. "How did you get this scar?" Yuning answered truthfully, "I got it trying to snatch someone else's role." Jingzhi pressed further. "Did you win or lose?" "I lost," Yuning admitted. "How could I compete with someone with that kind of background? Besides, at the time, CEO Lu was suppressing me, and so were you." Hearing this, Jingzhi gently pulled her into his arms. "From now on, you'll both have backing," he murmured, "and more than that, I'll never lose to anyone." Yuning was stunned. "Good heavens, does my brother really need to be this domineering?" Jingzhi continued, "But don't think this makes me your captive." He gently stroked her hair, his eyes filled with tenderness. Later, after changing her clothes, Yunjin saw Jingzhi engrossed in a book. She pursed her lips, thinking, "Why has he suddenly become so cold, not even looking at me?" She lay down on the bed, but Jingzhi remained in the same position. She was utterly perplexed. He's really not hugging or kissing me at all. Finally, Jingzhi put down his book, but he rolled over to sleep without even glancing at Yuning. She frowned. "What's going on? Have I been banished to the cold palace?" Meanwhile, at old Lu's house, Lu Shudong sneered at his son. "You came at the right time. You haven't seen your elder brother's face. There's finally a time when the old man is on your side. At least it's worth celebrating." He recalled the moment he delivered the news. "Mr. Z, if Zonya's child is born, it will be our family's first grandson." Mr. Z said with satisfaction, "This time, for the sake of this nephew, I'll spare him. But if he dares to act recklessly again, I won't let him off so easily." Shudong said happily, "Don't worry, Mr. Z. Zonya has realized his mistake. He promises he won't do it again." After hearing this, Lu Zonya swirled his wine glass gleefully. "You've finally gotten rid of that pesky Jiang Yuning. No, you must make her suffer in despair." Hearing this, Shudong immediately scolded, "Don't talk nonsense. She will be your sister-in-law." Zong Yi sneered, "Mom, have you forgotten how she showed off in front of my brother the other day? I want to teach her a lesson." The next day, Yuning's car drove smoothly along the main road. Sitting in the back seat, she asked, "Isn't this the way to Lawyer Quinn's office?" "This road seems to lead to the cemetery." The assistant in the front nodded, "Yes, Miss Jiang. Lawyer Quinn passed away from liver cancer 2 years ago." Yuning was startled. "Then what about his family?" The assistant replied, "Please rest assured, Miss Jiang. The second young master has made proper arrangements. Although those 2 people don't deserve it." Yuning asked suspiciously, "Does my brother still keep in contact with Lawyer Jiang Jian?" The assistant nodded, "Yes." Gazing out the window, Yuning thought, "It seems my brother has kept a lot of things from me." Soon they arrived at Luoqing's cemetery. Standing before Lawyer Quinn's tombstone, Yuning reminisced, "I was very young back then, but I clearly remember when the burden was so heavy I could barely breathe. He told me not to worry about anything. I didn't expect my benefactor's child to be gone already." After paying her respects to Lawyer Quinn, she turned to the assistant. "Take me to see Lawyer Quinn's family." Yuning arrived at Lawyer Quinn's house and rang the doorbell. The door opened, and she was greeted by Mrs. Quinn. Yuning asked, "Are you Mrs. Quinn?" Mrs. Quinn smiled kindly. "Miss Jiang, please come in. Please have a seat." Yuning asked in surprise, "You know me?" Mrs. Quinn replied, "Old Quinn worked for the Jiang family, so of course I've met you. It's just a pity that old Quinn passed away many years ago. Are you here because of the Jiang family's matters?" Yuning nodded. "Yes, I want to know how much money the Jiang family owed back then, and how the matter was resolved." Mrs. Quinn furrowed her brow in recollection. "After your father disappeared, your mother single-handedly supported the Jiang family's business. But as a woman, she was simply unable to turn the tide. To save the Jiang family, she hired Lawyer Quinn to stabilize things, and then went to the United States to ask her friends for help. It wasn't until much later that she managed to raise a large sum of money to repay the Jiang family's debts. However, in order to repay the debt, she had to stay abroad. To lessen the burden on her children's minds, she even told old Quinn not to tell them about it." Hearing this, Yuning frowned and remained silent. A moment later, she left. The assistant, seeing her, asked, "Did Mrs. Quinn tell you that the Lu family handled the Jiang family's debt back then?" Sitting in the car, Yuning tilted her head. Uncle, is there anything else you're keeping from me? The assistant asked again. Mrs. Quinn already told you. Don't you believe it? Yuning crossed her arms. She must have forgotten I'm an actress. When it comes to acting, her performance was too poor. I look very different from when I was a child. So even if she had met me back then, there's no way she could recognize me at a glance now. She thought to herself. It seems she already knew I was coming. The traces of orchestration are too obvious. Moreover, my second brother knows a lot about the Jiang family's lawyer, so there must be some secret. The assistant hesitated. If Miss Jiang already understands everything, why not be bold and verify your suspicions? Back then, the Jiang family was suddenly emptied out, leaving a debt of 800 million. She was only 19 years old at the time. What was she supposed to do? Yuning was shocked when she heard the figure, 800 million. The assistant frowned. It was the second young master who sold all the property his mother left him and then borrowed a lot of money from some friends to cover the Jiang family's debt, not wanting to alarm anyone in the Lu family. This is why Miss Jiang didn't end up burdened with the debt. 5 years ago, I accompanied second master to Lawyer Quinn's office. For the past few years, I've been handling all matters related to him. Second master has done so much for Miss Jiang, but he made Lawyer Quinn keep it all confidential, even preventing her from discovering his involvement. I don't know why he did that, but it seems he never wanted her to know anything. Second young master did so much for you. Yet you're going to marry third young master Lu. I used to despise you, but because second young master never blamed you. Yunjin, after hearing everything, was in tears, silently cursing Lu Jingzhi. Are you a fool? Why did you do so much and not let me know? You're so clever. Why did you deliberately run into me and then break the rules again? The assistant drove her to the Banshan villa. Yunjin, now calmer, stepped out of the car. The assistant said, second young master said that the play that needs to be acted still needs to be acted. Discuss the rest privately. Yunjin asked, puzzled, do you know what Madame Jean wants to talk to me about? The assistant smiled and replied, Madame Fu sent someone to the Jean residence last night. If Miss Fu wants to take credit, let her. Miss Jiang is so smart, she'll surely know what to do, right? Yunjin smiled faintly and replied, I understand. She walked forward and rang the doorbell. As soon as the door opened, Yunjin rushed towards Yahweh excitedly. Mom, I misunderstood you. Yahweh gently stroked her hair. Silly child, how can there be misunderstandings between mother and daughter? We're connected by blood. You're my only daughter. She breathed a sigh of relief. It seemed Madame Quinn's words had worked. Yunjin silently cursed. Disgusting. But on the surface, she still pretended to be obedient. Mom, from now on, we'll never be separated again. I'll agree to whatever you say. Yahweh smiled faintly and comforted her. All right, such a pretty face looks terrible when you cry. I don't need you to promise me anything. As long as you support your sister's marriage to the Lu family, that's the greatest kindness to me. Yunjin listened and replied, since Mom has said so, then I agree. Yahweh smiled and said, silly girl, I'll find you a better man in the future. Also, I've prepared your contract with Chun World Entertainment. We'll have dinner at the Lu family's tomorrow night. After you start working at the new company, I'll have your sister take care of you. Yunjin obediently replied, okay, Mom. Yunshu stood behind the wall, silently mocking. Idiot, believing every word from her stepmother. She's so stupid, it's almost pitiful. Jingzhi was walking side by side with two other people. He answered Yunjing's call with a smile. Brother, come and pick up your little ancestor. Jingzhi nodded. Send me the address. Jingzhi, seeing his friend's interest, asked, do you have someone you like? Is it the person in your heart? Jingzhi nodded. Yes. The guy shrugged regretfully. So, my sister has no chance? Bring her to meet her sometime. A while later, Jingzhi's car arrived at Yunjin's place. She was waiting downstairs and called out, Brother Jingzhi. Jingzhi smiled. Get in. Yunjin started chattering as soon as she got into the car. Brother Jingzhi. Jingzhi, feeling a little tired, held her and closed his eyes. Let's talk when we get home. Yunjin smiled tenderly, thinking, for some reason, as long as her brother was by her side, she felt safe. The two returned home together. Jingzhi pushed her against the wall, questioning how she dared to start causing trouble. In the car, Yunjin blinked innocently and asked, wasn't it just a hug? Jingzhi said, I understand what you mean. I didn't do what I did 5 years ago for you to be grateful to me, so you don't have to look at me with that grateful expression. Yunjin smiled and replied, but Big Brother did help me overcome this problem, and I really like Big Brother. Jingzhi grabbed her hand and asked, so you want to repay me this way? Do you think you're worth 800 million? He then turned around, buttoning his shirt a flicker of displeasure crossing his face. Yunjin reached out and grabbed him. I know you don't need my gratitude, she said, but what about my feelings? Do you want them or not? Does it only count as love if you love me? And if I love you, it means nothing. She threw herself at him. I'm going to be your little ancestor, she declared. Don't even think about going back on your word. Jingzhi gave a cold laugh. Last night, you would rather die than let me touch you, he said. And now you're willing? Yunjin's voice dropped to a whisper. Actually, she confessed, there's a reason I keep rejecting you. When I was 16, Lu Jingzhi used my classmate to trick me into a small grove where I was almost assaulted by 3 men. Thankfully, the owner of a nearby flower shop saved me. Ever since then, I've had a mental block about intimacy. Hearing this, Jingzhi picked her up. So she's been carrying this trauma, he thought. Setting her down, he asked, have you forgotten our bet? Who was it that said, I've been single for 24 years. Another 10 days isn't a problem? Yunjin wrapped her arms around his shoulders, a smile playing on her lips. Because it's you, she murmured. Brother, let's try tonight. Jingzhi cursed inwardly. This silly girl was clearly scared to death, yet she was still putting on a brave face. Starting tomorrow, he said, we'll take things step by step. You have to listen to me. Yunjin took his hand. I want another kiss, she whispered. And so, they kissed passionately again. After a while, Yunjin asked, by the way, big brother, Mrs. Fu invited me to dinner at the Lu family's tomorrow. Will you be going? Jingzhi replied, where you are, I will be too. Yunjin smiled sweetly. Then I won't have to worry about being bullied, she said. You really are the best big brother. Jingzhi told her that the DNA test results comparing third uncle and second uncle would be out tomorrow morning, and Sister Liang would go to the hospital to pick up the report. Yunjin's eyes lit up. It seems the show is about to begin, she said with anticipation. Jingzhi reassured her. No matter how chaotic it gets, I will protect you. Don't mention it. Yunjin replied with a smile. Are you usually such a polite person? It's a good thing I'm clever and didn't let Mrs. Fu take credit for your work. But, second brother, is there anything else you're hiding from me? Jingzhi changed the subject, closing his eyes and holding her close. Go to sleep, he murmured. Yunjin pursed her lips, thinking, it seems it's true. After all, brother has done so much for me in secret. The next morning, a servant handed her a document. Miss, she said, this is the test report from the hospital. Yunjin took it. Thank you, she replied. Sister Liang, looking at the results, she confirmed that Lu Zhengbo was not Lu Zhongye's biological father. Yunjin wasn't surprised. It was Li Shudong pulling the strings, as she suspected. Most of the Lu family members had always been upright, but then there was the arrogant Lu Zhongye. Who would have thought he wasn't a Lu at all? She picked up the phone and called Jiang Ming. Hello, Sister Yunjin, he answered. Yunjin informed him that the results were out, and just as they had suspected, Jiang Ming was astonished. Really? He exclaimed. Sister Yunjin, I've met the old woman's adopted daughter. She's disabled. I heard she was in a car accident a few years ago, and it seemed like it wasn't a simple accident. The old woman said that a few years ago, she went to the Lu family to return the child, but she didn't see anyone from the Lu family. The next day, her daughter had a car accident, and she felt like it was a warning, so she didn't dare go again. Yunjin asked him, what's her daughter's attitude about all this? It was confirmed that Lu Zhongye wasn't a Lu, but her daughter's identity still needed to be proven. Jiang Ming suggested, how about we go and investigate? Yunjin said, no need, Jian Ming said, practically bubbling with excitement. Just wait for my news. It's a shame Ji is still in America. He's going to miss all the fun. Yuning, I'll see you this afternoon. A little while later, the two arrived at an apartment and rang the doorbell. A young woman, Jingshu, opened the door, her eyes wary. Who are you? What do you want? Jian Ming offered a gentle smile. Don't be afraid. This is my sister. She wanted to meet you. Is now a good time? Jingshu's face immediately hardened. No, she said, starting to close the door. Yuning stepped forward, stopping the door with her hand. I'm here because of who you are, not to presume anything. If you feel wronged, perhaps I can help. Jingshu paused, staring at Yuning for a long moment. Then she turned and said, come in. As they entered, Yuning thought to herself, she really does bear a resemblance to the Lu family. There's something about her brow and eyes that reminds me of her brother. Yuning got straight to the point. Do you want revenge? I have proof that Lu Zuya isn't the Lu family's biological son. If you still don't want to expose them, I won't force you, and I'll protect your privacy. Jingshu's reply startled Yuning. But what if I want to kill them? Her voice dripped with bitterness. No, I want them to live a life worse than death. They were afraid I would threaten Lu Zuiya's position, so they broke my legs. How could a mother be so cruel? I'm sorry, Yuning said softly. I didn't mean to bring up painful memories. Jingshu gritted her teeth. If you weren't going to expose them, I'd already be crippled, unable to fight back. But if I can make that mother and daughter suffer, I'm willing to pay with my life. It doesn't have to be that drastic, Yuning reassured her. To ensure the Lu family trusts us, I need you to cooperate with a test. Afterward, we'll arrange for a doctor to examine your legs and see if they can be healed. This has nothing to do with whether or not you're a Lu. Yuning is really impressive, gaining their trust so quickly. That evening, at the Lu family's old mansion, the scene quickly shifted to the Lu family's old mansion that night. A servant at the door bowed. Miss Jiang, please come in. Yuning offered a brief thanks and entered, her eyes sweeping over the assembled family. Looking at these hypocrites, she settled into a chair, a small smile playing on her lips. The show is about to begin. Just then, Li Shutong spotted her and began to sneer. Well, look who's here. Yahui, seated beside her, immediately called out, Yahui, come sit down, dear. We were just discussing your brother's wedding. Li Shutong offered a suggestion. Sister-in-law, why not have Yuning be a bridesmaid? It would be a good way to dispel the rumors of their discord. What do you think? Yuning spoke up. It's quite surprising that a renowned actress like her can't find a suitable bridesmaid and has to ask me. If something goes wrong at the wedding, will everyone blame me? Yahui said awkwardly. Perhaps we should find another bridesmaid. Li Shutong feigned a smile. Since you feel that way, sister-in-law, I won't insist. I truly felt sorry for Yuning when her engagement with Zuoya was broken off. Perhaps I should introduce her to another eligible young man. What do you think? Yahui chuckled. My daughter won't trouble you with that, sister-in-law. Shutong replied, Oh dear, if you hadn't mentioned it, I would have forgotten Yuning is your biological daughter. Yuning's voice cut through the air. You've only been a servant for a few days, and your tongue is already so sharp? Or is it because you've latched onto my sister and the Donghan group that you think you're so important now? Shutong glared at her, as if about to unleash a torrent of abuse. Yusher, also adopting a saccharine tone, said, Aunt Yunjin is only thinking of your best interests. You shouldn't be so rude to your elders. Eunice retorted, She can meddle in my relationships, but I can't retaliate. If she wants to talk about my marriage, then don't blame me for wistfully thinking of Gary. The two loudmouths on either side of her ganged up on her, one accusing her of cruelty, the other saying the child was innocent and she shouldn't curse her sister. Eunice stood her ground. Let's be clear, you two were the ones being sneaky first. The whole country knows why. Need I remind you? Zoni interjected, pointing at her face and snapping, Shut up. You're not even worthy of being compared to Yusher. Then, his tone softening, he turned and said, Auntie, today was supposed to be the day we discussed my marriage with Yusher. We didn't hold this banquet to witness her attitude. The Lu family isn't to be trifled with. Both matriarchs frowned at this remark. Eunice pressed on, But who started it? Who has the right to spout nonsense? Zoni pointed a warning finger at her face. Jiang Yunis, whether you admit it or not, I'll still be your brother-in-law in the future, so I have the right to discipline you. Jingzhi suddenly appeared amidst the squabble. She's not your responsibility, Lu Jingzhi. The CEO had arrived. The troublemaking couple broke out in a cold sweat, calling out, Brother. Yunjin thought gleefully, My poor brother-in-law is about to have a bad time. By family ranking, I'm your dear sister-in-law, and by authority. Jingzhi looked at Yusher. You're not part of the Lu family, so you don't need to call me brother. Eunice, watching Jingzhi handle the situation, felt a surge of pride. My man, she thought truly magnificent. Jingzhi steered the conversation back on track. Weren't we supposed to be discussing the marriage? Why all this commotion? Or have you decided against it? Sheldon hastily replied, Of course not. It was just a small disagreement, right, sister-in-law? Yahu also nodded in agreement. Jingzhi walked over to the dining table. In that case, let's discuss this over dinner. As Eunice walked past, he caught her hand and said, Sit next to me. All eyes turned to the gesture. Shodong couldn't help but comment, I really don't know when you two got so close. Jingzhi brought up the marriage arrangements entrusted to him by his grandfather, mentioning that the Lu family might be at a slight disadvantage. Shodong said to Yahu, guilt evident in his voice, Yusher's child is already 8 weeks along, so let's register the marriage quickly. Sister-in-law, what do you think? Yahu agreed, saying she would consult a geomancer, and if there was an auspicious date this month, they would proceed immediately. Yusher spoke up, Mom, anything is fine. The most important thing is my happiness, as long as I'm with Zoni. I don't really need a big ceremony. I don't want Eunice to feel uncomfortable. And the media has been focusing on us. So if we make a big fuss, I'm afraid it will affect the baby's development. Then, Eunice said with a smile, if that's the case, then let's not have a big ceremony. I'll feel more at ease. Zoni snapped, shut your trap. Jingzhi finally spoke. Then let's not have one. The Lu family doesn't want to lose face either. Grandfather agrees to your marriage, but he won't attend the wedding. As for the betrothal gifts, he has prepared some things for you, sure, but they've already been retrieved, so the Hu family doesn't need to prepare reciprocal gifts. A small gesture between the two families will suffice. Annie, what do you think? Yu might feel that Yushir isn't her biological daughter. She smiled. If their relationship is so strong, they probably won't mind these things. Seeing the range of expressions on the faces around the table, Yunjin laughed. Then she looked at Jingzhi, pointing at her phone, gesturing for him to look at a message. Brother, your little darling wants to go home. Wait a moment, and then you can leave with me. Zhong Yi was astonished. How could this be? His brother was actually texting Jiang Yuning. Yuning gave a helpless little laugh, thinking, oh dear, does my brother want to go public with this? Suddenly, mid-conversation, Yushir cried out in pain. Zhong Yi panichkit. You sure what's wrong? He asked. Yushir replied, my stomach suddenly hurts. I don't know what's happening. It's so strange. Supporting Yushir, Zhong Yi said, Mom, I'm taking Yushir to the hospital for a checkup. Shudong was also anxious. All right, go ahead. Remember to take good care of my future daughter-in-law and grandchild. Yuning also stood up. If the main guest isn't feeling well and wants to leave early, then there's no reason for me to stay. Mom, I'll be going now. Yehu asked her, where do you live? Yuning replied, Jin Hui Gardens. Jingzhi also stood up. I'm going the same way. I'll give you a ride. Yuning bowed her head slightly. Thank you, brother. Yushir thought to herself, I've already said it. In the future, Lu Jingzhi will be the heir to the Lu family, and Yuning isn't in the same league. Once in the car, she coughed lightly and said to him, just then, I thought you were about to make our relationship public. Jingzhi asked with a smile, what? Couldn't wait. Yuning replied, of course not. Who would care? Hearing her denial, Jingzhi pressed further. Really? Perhaps a little eager for some affection? Yuning bolted, anticipating a quiche. Jingzhi pulled a stack of documents from the back seat. He flicked her forehead lightly. Now isn't the right time to go public. Be good. Wait a little longer. Yuning rubbed her forehead, complaining, brother, why do you sound more and more like a jerk lately? Jingzhi looked at the documents. When are you planning to use this? Yuning sighed. She had to wait until Yushir married into the Lu family before she could address this matter. Didn't Yushir want to get married so badly? On her wedding day, when she discovered she had married an imposter, she would surely be furious. She leaned against him. Brother, I want to help the woman who was replaced by Lu Sonia. Maybe it's because she reminds me a little of you. I can't bear to see her living so miserably. Is that all right? Jingzhi said he would have his secretary make arrangements. Yuning teased, brother, do you really think Yushir isn't pretty? The media used to compare me to her, saying we were worlds apart. Jingzhi replied, a surgically enhanced face. How can anyone remember it? Yuning gave him a thumbs up. Even my brother knows how to play dumb now. At the hospital, Zhong Yi urged Yushir to stop getting upset over insignificant people. It was harming her and the baby, and it pained him to see it. Yushir said sadly, Zhong Yi, can't our wedding be a little grander? A girl only gets married once. I really want a dreamy, romantic wedding. Zhong Yi held Yushir's hand. Don't worry, our wedding will be the most luxurious, the most romantic wedding in the world. As for that little brat Jiang Yuning, I'll find a way to deal with her and make her remember what happened in the past. Yushir added fuel to the fire. She dared to sow discord in front of your mother. Now your mother doesn't like you as much as she used to. Zhong Yi comforted her, saying he would find a way to win back his mother's favor for her. At Yuning and Jingzhi's home, Yuning was lost in thought. She hadn't paid much attention before she left earlier today. Had Sister Liang arranged it? Jingzhi walked over and asked what she was thinking about. Yuning asked, what's this curtain for? Jingzhi smiled, pulled back the curtain, and stepped inside. Turning on the faucet, he stood there demonstrating it for her, asking for her opinion. Is this all right? Yuning was delighted not quite a perfect 10, but smiling constantly. He then turned off the water, put on a bathrobe, and walked out. That's all for tonight. Yuning was bewildered. So this was how a CEO took things step by step? The more she thought about it, the more frustrated she became. This is pure torture. His perfect physique right in front of me, and I can't even look. Ugh, Yuning grumbled, her voice thick with indignation. How many more days are you planning on keeping this up? Jingzhi chuckled. What? Can't take it anymore. A wave of misery washed over Yuning. Jingzhi remained unyielding, steadfast in his teasing torment, enduring, just as he'd said he would. Just take it easy, Yuning whined. Brother, you're so heartless, holding a grudge like this. Jingzhi dangled the bait. Aren't you even more excited for tomorrow? Now sleep, my little ancestor. Yuning considered a plan, but it wouldn't work. Tomorrow, she would have to retaliate. Later, she would post online for help. The title, Seeking 100 Ways to Sleep with a Domineering CEO from 500 Brothers. Behind her, Jingzhi chuckled softly to himself. 10 days. There was no need. His little ancestor would take the bait herself. Early morning, outside the grand villa, a phone rang. The caller ID, Jiang Yuning. Yuning startled awake, reaching for the phone on the table. Still half asleep, she wondered who would call so early. Why would Mr. Gao call at the crack of dawn, she thought. She answered. Jiang Ming's voice boomed through the receiver. Yuning, have you seen the latest entertainment news? There's a rumor that Hui Yushi is pregnant. The whole internet is tearing her apart. Yuning calmly asked, so who's avenging you this time? Jiang Ming sounded equally surprised. Oh, I thought you spread the news. At this, she bolted upright in bed. Speaking of which, hey, buddy, can you use your social media superpowers to find out who started this rumor? Jiang Ming didn't understand. Why bother? Whoever leaked it isn't a good thing. Her expression turned serious. If even you think I'm spreading rumors, won't others think the same? What's more, she's pregnant now. If something happens to her and she blames me, won't I become the scapegoat? Jiang Ming was taken aback. Then understanding dawned. Makes sense. I'll help you look into it. Super easy. I'll let you know as soon as I find anything. With that, the call ended. Yuning had barely put down the phone when it rang again. Seeing Fu Yuhua's name, she frowned, thinking, right, it's Hui Yushi. The voice on the other end commanded, Yuning, come to the Banshan Villa. The line went dead. Yuning held the phone, a triumphant smirk playing on her lips. You want to put on a show? Let's see it through then. A while later, at the Banshan Villa, inside the villa, Mother sat on a chair by the staircase, arms crossed. A doctor and a newcomer descended the stairs. Hui Yushi, dressed in a vibrant, lively dress, entered with a feigned air of cheerfulness, approaching the bottom of the stairs just as the doctor was giving instructions. The pregnant woman is showing signs of miscarriage, so it's best to have her on bed rest and observe her for 2 days. Remember, do not upset the pregnant woman. It's absolutely forbidden. However, the moment Hui Yushi's agent saw Yuning, she pointed and yelled, if anything happens to Yushi, you can forget about ever stepping foot inside Chunshur Entertainment. Yuning sat down on a chair. Yahweh looked at her and asked, Yuning, did you spread the news about your sister's pregnancy? Yuning maintained her composure. Mom, is this really necessary? Then why would I suspect you? Yahweh continued. If it wasn't me, then who else could it be? Yuning looked directly at her mother. Mom, am I your daughter, or is Hui Yushi? I can't believe there's a mother in this world who doesn't trust her own child, but believes an outsider. Yahweh retorted, a mother supports what is right, not blood ties. Your sister is pregnant now. How could you do such a thing at a time like this? Suddenly, Hui Yushi rushed forward and knelt at Yahweh's feet, wailing, Mom, you must stand up for me. Yuning spread the news of my pregnancy, not only to ruin my career, but also to take my life and my baby's life. Yuning let out a cold laugh. Keep acting, Hui Yushi. Clutching Yuai's skirt in one hand and pointing at her with the other, Hui Yushi cried, Yuning, I know you hate me because I stole your husband and your mother, but I didn't do it on purpose. I've already apologized to you. Can't you just forgive me and my child? Hui Yushi's agent added, Yuning is truly vicious. Yuning placed her hand to the side and said with a smile, yes, I'm incredibly cruel. I just don't want to see you or this child. So why not take this opportunity to go to the hospital and take care of it? Hearing this, Hui Yushi gritted her teeth in anger and said, look at her, Mom. She grabbed her bag and said, Hui Yushi, where did you get the idea that I've been clinging to you and that good-for-nothing scum? Hui Yushi retorted, it's clearly you. You just won't admit it. Yuning glanced over and said, are you sure? Then, turning her phone around for everyone to see, she continued, if I really wanted to spread rumors, I would definitely leaked the news of you fooling around with that big shot from the entertainment industry on the yacht. I wonder what CEO Lu would think when he sees that. Seeing this, both Hu Yushi and her agent were startled and exclaimed, "How did you get these photos?" Yuning asked, "Do you think netizens will be more interested in the fact that you're pregnant or the fact that you're two-timing? Will mom still believe you then? You're my biological daughter, while she's just my stepdaughter. She's just doing this to drive a wedge between us. Mom, don't let others play you like a fiddle." Hu Yushi looked at Yuai fearfully and explained, "Mom, I don't want to break you two up. This is all Jiang Yuning slander." Yuning, looking at the phone still displaying the photo, said, "I was originally going to let you off the hook, but given the current situation, it seems there's no need for that now. If you think I enjoy spreading this kind of news, well then, I might as well release this one too." Upon hearing this, Hu Yushi immediately jumped up in fright and knelt down to beg, "Please, Yuning, I was wrong. Don't do this to me. I didn't mean to frame you. I was just so angry, so I misspoke." Yuning sneered. "So you were just so angry that you misspoke, Well, I'm pretty angry now too. Did you think I was really that easy to bully? I'm aware you might have more tricks up your sleeve. Perhaps CEO Lu is already on his way, so he can see your true colors." Hu Yushi, her face filled with fear, put on a pitiful expression and said, "Yuning, please don't tell CEO Lu about this. I was just momentarily confused." Seeing Hu Yushi's appearance, Yuning became even more sarcastic. "So you don't know fear, Then, looking at the furious agent, she said, "Aren't you going to help her up? If she sits here for too long and goes into premature labor, she'll blame me." At this moment, Yuai shouted, "Are you really going to play with someone's life like this?" Before Yuning could answer, the doorbell rang incessantly. Yuning stood up, turned around, and prepared to go out, saying, "CEO Lu is so impatient. I'll go open the door for him." Hu Yushi grabbed her skirt and pleaded, "No, Yuning, don't let him in."